All right, welcome, everybody. Sorry we're a little late. I'll go through the agenda. 7 o'clock, citizens input. 7:05, discussion vote on Christine Igo Freeman becoming a member of the Library Board of Trustees with term expiring May 2017. 7:15, commuter rail pilot program. Consideration of the response from the MBTA concerning the commuter rail pilot program. 7:45, regional dispatch, regional emergency communication center discussion, consideration, possible vote. 8:15, selectmen's update. 8:25, discussion 2017 Board of Selectmen goals. 8:35, town manager update. 8:45, assistant town manager's update, and then we have a bunch of action items to discuss. I thought, in light of us running late, we'll actually do this meeting in reverse. That was a joke. Doc, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Lighten up, everybody, come on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now I know not to leave my day job.
Yeah.
Anybody here for a citizen's input? Up to a microphone.
I got some papers. Are these working? I
Yep.
can sit? Is this working okay? Hopefully I won't take too much time. George Leonard, 3 Aldrich Road, Foxboro. What I'm about to talk about, I was going to do many, many times. I just haven't got around to doing it. It's relative to communication to and from the town, and in particular relative to real estate taxes. When asking or talking on real estate taxes, no one seems to get the full picture. The town always talks about the levy to the limit, or Prop 2.5. They also talk about new revenues from the fiscal year, but they never mention about the revaluations of existing homes. My home, which was, well, let me first indicate that I did this study about a month and a half ago, so the 2017 information wasn't online, and so I worked with 2015 and 2016 information. But I also know that what I'm going to talk about has continued to increase in 2017, but there was a very big impact between 2015 and 2016. My property, being .49 or half acre, was originally assessed for $130,500. It was raised in 16 to $154,600, or a $24,100 increase. Our neighborhood was basically around the same percentages because I did check a lot of them. For the fun of it, I started to look at some other neighborhoods, and for what it's worth, please excuse me, but I picked a couple of the assessors, the selectmen, to look at their areas. One area which had 1.9 acres was valued at $178,400, increased to $214,300, or a $35,900 increase. A neighbor of his who had 4.62 acres was $213,300, increased to $261,200, or a $47,900 increase. The second area I took a look at was Fairway Lane. One person there had 1.3 acres with a value of $171,700, went up to $207,600, or a $35,900 increase. The same as what happened on the 1.9 acres of property. Another person having .92 or less than an acre went from $167,900 to $203,800, also went up $35,900. I have no idea what's causing these discrepancies. I am not adept at finding out where these figures came from. I just know I'm reporting on them. But there's strange discrepancies in the percentages as applied to these properties. In the Foxboro area where I lived, Aldrich Road and Adams Street, the entire area went up between 18.5 and 18.4%. The North Street area, property under an acre went up roughly 34.1%. Other property, 2 acres and more, went up 30%. McKinsey area went up 20.1 and 22.4. Fairway Lane went up 20.9 and 21.4. What makes all these differences in both locations of acreage, I just don't know. I don't know where these figures come from. I understand that there is, at least way back when I looked into it, property was supposed to be revalued every 3 years, and money was put aside annually in order to get a company to do this. I haven't followed this. I've been in town for almost 50 years. I haven't followed it for 50 years. However, last year, I just was struck by what was going on, and quite honestly, I'll mention it right now, so impressed with Jim DeVellis' talk regarding Prop 2.5 and the possibility of lowering it or doing something with it, encouraged me to continue to look into these figures. Well, to start with, without 2.5 increase, my real estate taxes at 15.3 cents per thousand would increase $360 a year. Now I'm 75. You know what's happened to me in the last 4 years. Where do I get the money from? I've been scraping it up every year for 4 years because COLA has not been very good to us. Not the same COLA that the school gets or whoever else gets. Where they get their figures from, I just don't know. Based on the acreage, the increases are not applied in the same manner. I would suggest that you look at your own property and then go back to maybe even request some revaluation of your property. Where does this lead us? Without Proposition 2.5, the town receives quite an increase just because of increases in land values alone. I'm not even talking about building. The only thing I'm talking about here is land. Land went up again this fiscal year. I'm not saying that I agree with these increased percentages because I don't know where they come from. However, it speaks to why Proposition 2.5, taxing to the limit, does not always apply. A mix of values in property 2.5 does. The town does 2.5 or an override warrant to be voted on at the town meeting. However, as you all know, Proposition 2.5 is a gimme. There's no vote by the town. How does a citizen in the town do an underride? How do the citizens in town get a warrant article to vote on an underride at a town meeting? Also, the town's citizens are never asked how to exempt or exclude bonded indebtedness from the Prop 2.5 calculation. In this town, I believe it's always been included, and there is, according to state law, it's able to be excluded. Basically, that's my entire talk. I just want to put it out to what I've just said. I'm 100% for and with doing away completely with Prop 2.5 for 1 year, not even half of it. Doing away with it. I don't want to get into school budgets and things like that, but if one read in the Town Reporter last week, I have to thank Dick Heidecker. He did a lot of research and had a very good article about Where's the Beef. The article was very true. It again was a typical situation where town employees tell you what they want to hear and do not give you the whole picture. Dick Heidecker did take Mr. Yucca apart a little bit, and he was right to do so, because some of the things that Mr. Heidecker said were not fully correct. I did some research in the state also, and I'll leave a copy of this with you. It's a Proposition 2.5 ballot question forms. Apparently on the underride and the override, it's only done by dollars and cents. It's not done by percentages. The only person who can apply a percentage is the town saying that they're going to apply 1% of the override, 1% of the Proposition 2.5 and not to the full limit that they're allowed to do. I'll leave this with the board as far as the questions. If they're interested in my write-up, it's there to have. I just think we've been taken, and it's time the buck stops. I think some of the budgets that we have in this town are just overly done. And we've been giving, and never asking for a real true evaluation and an exchange. The only one that I'll talk about for a second, and I don't want to get any more, 300 less students and 45 more student employees. Who is kidding who? The state mandates certain new budgetary requests that they have people do. This takes employees to feed the state. That's a lot of baloney. Half of these things that the state asks for are probably done in the office by the clerks and not by other people that they're hiring. Unless you have any questions, enough said. I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you for taking the
I
time.
don't think we can ask questions.
Yeah, we can't ask him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you're taking the notes, so you can take that for them, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, George.
Thank you. Explain why we can't communicate.
Yeah, and because it's not posted on our agenda, we can't
I understand that fully.
have an interaction. This is your forum to get, make a presentation like you just did.
100% agree.
Yes, sir.
Bill Hamilton from Walpole. I just have some facts.
This is for citizen input for residents of Foxboro.
Only for residents?
Yes.
Well, you are going to vote on a train that's going to pass right by us, and I have some important facts for
We're
you.
gonna discuss that in a few minutes.
Will I be able to speak then?
Yeah, we'll give you an opportunity to speak.
Okay, I didn't know if I could speak.
No,
then
it's
or
just for citizen input for residents of Foxboro for this
Well, thank you.
topic. Any other Foxboro citizens have anything? Okay, we'll move on to the 7:05 agenda item. Board of Library Trustees, Christine Freeman.
Excuse me, David, can I ask just one other
Sure.
question? Can the Board of Selectmen please get back to me on just how the citizens in the town would put a warrant article on such as an underwriting request?
Sure,
I have no idea. I just have the forms that the state approves.
I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Penders. I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Boyden Library. With me this evening, on my left, is Christine Freeman. And also with me to my right are our director, Manny Leet, the vice chair, Tom McGee, and members Colin Ernst, Joseph Lally, and Deb Stone. Thank you for putting us on the schedule and for the opportunity for us to talk to you tonight about an appointment. Just by way of background, we have a resignation from Sue Berlone, who most recently who had served with us for 4 years rather, had to resign due to personal reasons in November. And following an email to you to notify you of that and a solicitation for interested appointments, we did fortunately receive an application from Christine, who we consider to be a great and qualified candidate that we wanted to put forward to both boards for a vote. Pursuant to our bylaws, any vacancy on our board will be filled by a joint majority vote of the trustees and the selectmen together. So we have noticed and are called to order for our purposes of the library board, and then we will adjourn immediately after this vote and go on our way. But Christine is able to be here tonight with us. She has an MS in library science, and therefore makes her eminently more qualified than any of the other trustees that we have. And so with that, I conclude my promotional remarks. But I don't know if you have any particular questions or comments you'd like to hear from Christine directly. Certainly, she's here and welcome to do so.
Any questions from the board?
Have you pulled your papers to run for next year? Because this term expires this May, right?
Not yet,
But
but I'm
that's,
seriously considering it.
we'll coerce her momentarily.
There you go.
You're right, though, Chris. She would serve the expiration, up through the expiration of this year,
Yep.
right? And then be on the ballot for May if she chooses to run, when she chooses to run, for the remaining 2 years of that seat.
When?
Correct.
Thanks for stepping up.
You're welcome.
Have you been in town for a while? I think it goes without saying, we're very happy that you're coming forward.
Thank you.
Do you have any overdue books?
I don't believe so.
We
think
charge
I'm-
double if you're a sitting member of the trustees. So,
Well, I couldn't think of a better candidate, so I'm thrilled.
Thank you.
No further questions? We'll take a vote.
Yeah,
Make a motion.
Move to approve Christine Igo Freeman as a member of the Library Board of Trustees with the term expiring May 2017.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
and to the fellow trustees here, I also make a motion to approve on behalf of the trustees. Second by Mr. McGee, Mr. Ernst. Mr. Ernst is going to second that. Any, all in favor? 5. So you're unanimous.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much for your time this evening. On a motion by McGee, second by Ernst, the library trustees are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Christine, I'll sign your papers when you pull them.
Thanks.
Ask for a raise.
No money.
Okay, still behind. 7:15, commuter rail pilot program, consideration of the response from the MBTA concerning the commuter rail pilot program. Bill, you want to give us some background information?
Sure. So the board, back in December of this past year, took a position of, that they, by a vote of 4-1, voted to support the start of the pilot program here in Foxboro, but did set aside several conditions which we put in writing to the state, and then ultimately heard back from the state in December, on December 20th, or a letter that was dated December 20th, addressed to myself. If you'd like, you want me to read that into the record, or would you?
Read that
Okay,
into
okay,
the
very
record,
good.
please.
All right, the letter is dated December 20th, 2016, addressed to myself. It said, "Dear Mr. Keegan, David Moeller has forwarded me your letter of this from December 1st. Your letter explains that the town is supportive of the proposed commuter rail program, but suggests concerns with respect to potential pilot and any permanent service that might follow it. I am writing to you in an attempt to clarify certain of the concerns that you might identify in your letter. The letter accurately noted that the town's Economic Development Committee voted 9-0 in favor of the proposal, and that the established commuter rail service was identified in the single most important strategy that the town could employ in a survey of strategies conducted by the town in order to promote economic development. You also note that the several Foxborough businesses and residents who spoke in favor of the proposed pilot at your November 29th meeting. However, in voting to confirm the support of the pilot, the Selectmen attached several conditions to the town's statement of support. Some of these conditions simply request confirmation of facts that we have already stated, i.e. that there are no at-grade crossings in Foxborough on the contemplated route, that we do not plan on overnight storage of trains in Foxborough during the pilot, and there will be no change in the town's assessment as a result of this service. Other conditions appear intended to ensure that the town will have to have input during the review process that we would undertake to evaluate the efficacy of the pilot. Those conditions contain several worthwhile suggestions that we would like to discuss further with you, provided that the Fiscal Management Control Board, FMCB, authorizes the pilot program. If so authorized, we certainly intend to solicit input from the town during the pilot and to review the results of the pilot with the town. So that you are aware, we are also currently in the process of establishing clear written criteria by which to evaluate such pilot programs. While we are committed to working with the town in this manner over the course of the pilot, we cannot commit to particulars such as a program oversight committee as a formal midpoint evaluation. More concerning is the first condition, i.e. that there be no action taken by the MBTA to provide permanent overnight storage of trains in Foxborough. As you know, the MBTA is a regional service. If the MBTA determines that it is in the public interest to provide this service to Foxborough, it must do so as part of the larger regional transportation network. A layover in Foxborough is not planned for the pilot because the MBTA is reluctant to make the necessary investment until the pilot has proven successful. However, layover capacity is part of any commuter rail service, and such facilities are at the end of virtually all the MBTA commuter rail lines. Citing layover facilities facilities at inconvenient locations from terminal stations can be burdensome on the MBTA system and result in additional operational costs to the agency. Therefore, in order to provide service of the community on a permanent basis in Foxboro Station, the MBTA anticipates that some layover capacity will be required here, which is why we are unable to fulfill this particular condition if the MBTA agrees to extend service to Foxboro on a permanent basis. The precise layout and location of any layout facility has yet to be determined, but it is important that the town to understand that without the possibility of layover capacity at the station, it is highly unlikely that the MBTA will provide permanent service to Foxboro Station. As I noted above, should the pilot proceed, we are committed to consulting the town on service requirements before any decisions are made regarding permanent service to Foxboro Station. If the town remains interested in moving ahead with the pilot and possible permanent service in a manner consistent with this letter, we will be happy to meet with you and work to prepare the proposal for FMCB to consideration in January. Obviously, that would be probably most likely would be in February now. Please let us know how you'd like to proceed. It's signed by Ashton Glenn, Rail and Transit Administrator. This item was not put on an agenda in December due to there was a member that was not present at that meeting, and then the first meeting in January was also a situation where a member was not present. So this item was obviously delayed until the full board could be here to contemplate and consider the letter that has just been sent, that had been sent.
So what the board is going to discuss tonight, whether to continue to support the pilot program in anticipation of a possible permanent program of permanent service to Foxboro Station.
That is correct.
Obviously, we have some people in the audience that have some concerns. We're going to take some concerns. We're going to open up the microphone. Please keep your comments brief and to the point, so we can try and get through to everybody, and then we'll have a discussion with the board and see if the support will remain.
Mr. Chairman, might I suggest that you hear from Foxborough residents first, and then Walpole residents second?
Yep.
And then we'll
Fair enough. So, having said that, is there any Foxborough residents here? Come up to the microphone, state your name and address.
I'm Majid Fawaz. I live on 135 North Street. I'm here more to collect some information about this. I don't have yet a fixed opinion. I think there is always pros and cons. Living on North Street, I do have a concern, but I'm willing to hear a little bit more.
Okay, Janet Kennedy, 45 Cocasset Street. I'm in support of it because I think it's a good idea, because if anybody tries to drive into Boston, it's terrible, 128. And also if you try to park at the train stations, especially Mansfield and Sharon, Attleboro, South Attleboro, you can't even get a space. And I think it's good to try the pilot program. And also I know people are concerned, they're worried about some of the kids. My whole thing is you have to teach your kids what to do and what not to do. I mean, it's important. They just need to know you don't walk on the tracks.
Hi. Jessica James, Camp Road, which is off North Street. I am in full support of the pilot program, knowing the conditions that they replied back with that they cannot meet. I just think about how well the town and the craft group has handled the stadium, and it builds my confidence in how they could deal with something like an overnight train. We probably have 70,000 plus people in and out in a day for a game, and you barely notice. I think we can handle an overnight train and a couple of passes back and forth throughout the day. And I will say, I'm a commuter. I appreciate a seat on the train right now, and I'm not always getting one. So the overburden lines, you know, can use some help.
That was a very good demonstration, by the way. It's like-
Yeah, well, my kids are, I don't know.
She's tough to follow. Hi, Ellen Davis, 200 North Street. I've lived on North Street for 34 years. And been involved in a lot of the economic development that we're talking about on Route 1. And I think a train station and a stop and active will really help Route 1. That's the beginning of what we need to do to develop Route 1, so definitely for it.
Hi, good evening. George Bell. I live at 27 Shoreline Drive. I've been a resident of Foxboro for 40 years. I've commuted into Boston downtown for 28 of those years, and I am in full support and would recommend going forward with a pilot study. Obviously aware and I want to say equally concerned for abutters and local residents, as I live close to that area, hear the train almost every morning, the whistles. And I would say that at the point where hopefully the pilot project is successful, that as a layover facility is required, that it be required. But I'm in full support of it, and I just want to recommend that to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Scott Kelly, 60 Carroll Drive. I'm a 10-year resident of Foxboro, and one of the appeals of the town for me was the craft group and the stadium and the economic benefit that it brings to the townspeople, myself included. I'm in full support of the pilot program. I do not live very close to the stadium itself, so I can understand there may be some concerns with layovers and whatnot, and I think that the pilot program should bear that out to see if that becomes a big issue. But aside from that, I think it's a great economic development for the community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Kelly, 20 Hartwell Drive, 30-year resident. Probably the second closest house to the train station. Very much in support of the pilot program. Okay with the concept of a layover, but would like to know more about logistics. Where would it go? How many trains? How long? Conceptually, I'm okay with it. Just would like to learn more.
Any other Foxborough residents?
This gentleman right here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
George Liddell again. I'll only take a second. One of the things that hasn't been brought up was the information in the it was in the Boston Globe. One of the big concerns of the layover station was the trains would be running. They will not be running. They will be in an enclosed area. So I think that should be brought up. I don't know why no one has brought that up yet.
Thank you.
Ed Lawton, 70 North Street, Foxborough here. I used to commute into Boston hauling byproducts out of Boston, and I watched them build the big dig. It was very interesting. I could drive real slow and see the trains go here and go there. The big dig's now obsolete. I'm very much in favor of commuter service because we don't need to go through the building of another big dig. There is a major concern in my mind that I'm sure it'll be used weekdays. We have weekday concerts. We have weekday football games. I'm concerned that I don't believe there's enough parking down there to take 500 parking places out of service. The stadium or the craft group or whatever corporation down there already has a pre-approved plan to put in a biotech center across the street from the stadium itself. That's going to take away parking spots and create a need for people that work there to park. The stadium had a great argument as to putting in the remote parking. It's because there weren't enough parking spots for the patrons as well as the people that work there. So I'm pretty sure there's probably not enough parking spots there. And I'm quite sure that you don't know if there is or there isn't. That's one of the big logistics. And I think that has to be resolved before you can say you can take 500 parking spots away from the current stadium facility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other Foxborough residents? No? We'll open up to some Walpole residents.
I believe that you.
State your name, sir.
Oh, Bill Hamilton from Walpole. I believe you people are much like us in Walpole, walking on sifting sand here. We can't get the straight facts from the DOT on what exactly they're going to do. One of my concerns is we have 2 at-grade crossings in Walpole. And I know that the Foxborough Board has said you don't want any at-grade crossings. And I don't blame you, because we don't want them either. My problem with the Summer Street crossing is that they're not going to put in quad gates. They're going to put in 2 gates that can have false alarms, and that's a nuisance. We had gates there years ago, and they had to be taken down because of the gridlock caused by people causing false alarms. Now, if they put in quad gates, that's the highest and best safety for gates that are crossing. They're controlled by radar. The radar sees the train coming, calculates its speed, puts the gates down 20 seconds before the train arrives, or maybe even earlier than that, depends on how they set it. It also, once those gates go down, the radar sweeps the path of the train to make sure there are no vehicles stuck in the path of the train. Now, at Summer Street, there have been 6 collisions with vehicles either mechanically disabled on the tracks or caught in gridlock because of the post office and the business. And they were stuck on the track. And by the time the engineer could see them, these were freight trains only going 10 miles an hour. A freight train at 10 miles an hour couldn't stop with the line of sight at that crossing. And once that collision happens, it was only at 10 miles an hour and no one's been killed. We're talking about a crossing that will be at 60 miles an hour, at least 40 miles an hour. At that speed, the train sucks the vehicle in, and the gas tank ruptures and explodes. And at most of the seminars I've been to on railroad safety, and I started out in 1975 to 1997, most of those seminars all showed trains derailing. And because of the curve at the post office on Summer Street, it's a good chance you're going to have a derailment on a collision with a vehicle at 40 miles an hour or higher. Now, the other grade crossing is the train station in Walpole. There's a system there now that all the DOT has said about the Walpole station is that they will put lights and gates up there to control the vehicle and pedestrian traffic crossing the tracks there. We don't know what kind of gates, we don't know what kind of fencing they're going to put in. They said they will put in fencing, because if you've ever been to the Walpole station, you can come up a kind of a blind access, cross the tracks for the freight train, which will now be the commuter rail, and your visibility is pretty restricted. So that's a very hazardous spot there. They're not at a point where they can tell us in Walpole how they're going to protect the Walpole station, which is another grade crossing. These grade crossings should be avoided. There isn't enough money in their budget to do it better than a quad gate, but they should do it at least as good as a quad gate. That's the best, highest, and safest way to handle a crossing there. And as we know, Summer Street has buses crossing along with vehicles, and children on bicycles will be crossing also. So I know you object to having them in Foxborough. I hope that you want to at least make sure that the crossings, the 2 grade crossings in Walpole, are safe.
Thank you.
And one other thing. They told us in the Foxborough, in the Walpole meeting, that the pilot program's gonna lose $2 million off the bat. And they expect to run operationally with a $2 million loss. Now, they're gonna expect the riders to pick that up, all the riders. And I think that's a little unfair. Now, they're giving you a big financial break and not assessing you. Walpole just got a heavy assessment because we have the train go through. A lot of the riders in Walpole, on the Walpole train station, come from other towns because it's a convenient station for them. So if you do want this, and I believe that you have to say you want it in order to get it, you ought to accept the assessment also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm not a Walpole resident, though. Is that okay? Thanks.
My name is Paul Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of the 495 Metro West Partnership. We're a public-private economic development nonprofit that was founded in 2003 to serve Foxboro and 34 other communities in the 495 Metro West region. I'll keep it simple. I am distributing a letter from our organization. I want to thank all of you in the town for your thoughtful deliberation over this matter. I recognize that it's quite complex and seriously poses some long-term consequences which I believe are beneficial to the town and the region. As my letter explains, our organization was first founded to work on transportation issues across the region. We work quite extensively on 3 commuter rail lines in the region, Franklin, Fitchburg, and Framingham, Worcester. So we are very familiar with rail issues. The other communities we work with have historically viewed and asked us to support greater state investment and greater transit services in an effort to boost their economies within their own communities and the entire region. We do feel that this service poses the potential of doing the same for the town of Foxborough and the region as a whole. If you look at patterns nationally and studies that have been done, it has been demonstrated that adding transit service does boost property values to both homeowners and commercial businesses. I feel you would see a benefit here, and I certainly applaud the visionary leadership of your EDC in supporting this. I was here in November when they read a very eloquent letter of support. Just to make it very simple, we feel that the public-private nature of this opportunity is both a benefit to the town and the Commonwealth. And I would point out right now the state is actively setting the parameters for this type of a pilot. I do feel this is an opportunity the town is carefully considering, but I do feel it's an opportunity that might not be there forever for the town's consideration. I think it's quite clear that the MBTA's Fiscal Control and Oversight Board is thinking in a long-term perspective over how to structure these pilots. The timing's fortuitous to have this conversation. I don't know if the timing will be as fortuitous down the road. So I do hope the town can work with MassDOT to structure an appropriate pilot, and I do applaud all of you for your visionary leadership in considering this. I'm happy to take any questions, but I do know you have a more detailed letter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
I'm Karen Dumaine with the Neponset Valley Transportation Management Association, and we are a public-private partnership as well, and we encompass the regions and the towns of Canton, Dedham, Foxborough, Norwood, and Westwood. We act as a formal structure for transportation collaboration focused on reducing traffic congestion and air pollution while increasing mobility and commuting options. We work with many of the businesses we work with many of the businesses to reduce traffic congestion and offer up alternative commuting options. And access to public transit is a key component number one to economic development and also to recruitment and retention. And the Neponset Valley TMA will be delighted to work very diligently with the town of Foxborough and all its businesses and residents to promote this program and make last mile connections as possible within the community. So, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we're gonna end the comments from the guests right now. I'll start off. When I first got this letter, I was obviously concerned about the layover. But to be honest with you, I had no idea what a layover, what it was, what actually goes on there. So I reached out to the MBTA and said, look, you know, is there a layover I can visit that would be somewhat similar to what you may possibly want to put in Foxborough? And they sent me down to Situate in the Greenbush line. And to be honest with you, I was kind of amazed because nothing happens there. The trains do not idle overnight. They're plugged in. They're plugged in electrically. They're kept warm. From what I understand, if the temperature drops below 10 degrees, they'll have to idle. So just for giggles, I went back and looked at the weather from November 1 through today, and then I looked at February of last year to kind of get a gauge and see how many days the train would have to idle overnight. And at 85 days, there was 5 days where the train would have to idle overnight. I also went to one of the neighbors' house. If you went down to the Situate station, there's actually a neighborhood 65 feet from the layover facility. And I talked to one of the neighbors. There's a 14-foot sound wall, which is very similar to what you see on 95 that they're putting up today with steel pilings and precast concrete walls. They said they don't even really hear the train. If they do, they hear it when it's idling at the station. They don't hear it at the layover. They obviously don't hear it in the summer because they're plugged in. So I was actually surprised the little pushback that the neighbors had being so close to the layover. So I think if anybody has the opportunity, take a ride down to Situate. That's actually a 5-track layover. What's being proposed in Foxborough, I think, is a 4-track layover. And they wouldn't confirm this, but they're saying that the only trains that'll be laid over is the primary train set for the regular commute, and then a backup set, and that's it. So, you know, in the letter, it also states that they're willing to work with us. So I think, you know, based on the amount of support, obviously we're concerned about impacting the residents on North Street. So we'll have to be, if it does pass, or we do continue to support, we'll have to monitor that during the pilot program. And we'll have to be willing to work with the T and hope the T's willing to work with us. So, anybody have any questions or
Good
comments?
research. What is, does anybody even know the answer to this during the pilot program? Like the whole evaluation process and how much? Jim shaking his head, no, we don't know,
Well,
or?
to be honest with you, I thought we'd have a presentation tonight, to be honest with you. I thought there would be somebody here from the T or the craft transit group to tell us that information.
I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna do a pilot to test this out before they spend all the money to build the facilities
Right.
and all that. So during that process, there has to be some things that went good, some things that went bad, and how can we all meet in the middle?
So, in the letter, that it says that they're putting together the criteria for that. It's really in the infancy, and they don't want to proceed with putting all that information together, putting those resources to develop that plan if we're not gonna support it.
Okay.
So at the last meeting that we had with the MBTA or the DOT, I thought they were not going to put the layover to try it. It was gonna go and rebuild, so there wasn't even gonna be a temporary, let's see how it is with the
Right.
noise. So we're not gonna have the opportunity to see how the layover works. So I'm, you know, like I said last time, I'm hearing regionally, businesses, the town, it's a good thing, so willing to give it a chance. I'm looking at it a little differently with respect to the layover, because that was my big issue, and I think it was the board's issue, and as well as a lot of people on North Street. The way that this started was a few years ago when they brought it full force ahead, and then things changed and it just got dropped, and different governor came in. But at that time, they had different vehicles. They didn't have the diesel engines. Then we were asked to vote on it under general discussion, not even a meeting. Then they came in and do the presentation, and they talked about a private-public partnership. Made their presentation, and we came up with our list of criteria. And that question was asked, is there going to be a layover? And the answer was, we don't know. We're gonna try the pilot. So we kinda took their word on that. Now, there was a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that was signed by the MBTA and by the Kraft Group back in 2015, 2 years ago, that very clearly said there will be a layover station. It's signed. There's an exhibit. Never been presented to our board. I had to get it from a newspaper reporter. It's public record. So when it comes in front of our board, all of a sudden after the fact, all along there was going to be a layover on Exhibit 1, wherever that layover is. If you look at the original report, back previously, they had 3 sites. One was a big site in Walpole, which was an industrial site, and that was the preferred site from the MBTA's perspective because it was the furthest from the neighbors. Doesn't matter Walpole or Foxboro, it was furthest from the neighbors. Then there were 2 sites on the Kraft property. One was midway, pretty much where the train stops now, on the other side of the tracks. That's another area that's very close to residential, a big parcel. Then there was a 3rd site that is the old Spooky World. You can see it from North Street as you go by. You can still see the remnants and the stuff that's out there. And on the report of the MBTA, they said that site, it's about 9 acres, the train would have to go past it, cross North Street, come back into the site, so that's their in-grade crossing. So I also did some research. I sat with, at invitation, with members of the Kraft Group to look at an aerial, and there was a very good meeting, and I think everyone that sat there was straight shooters that said, look, we're trying to make it work, but we don't have any information on the layover site. The one in Walpole is off the table, from what I understand, because there's a solar panel project that went there. There remains 2 sites. The one on the other side, I was told, probably wouldn't work because it's for different reasons. So that leaves the 3rd site, which, according to the report, conflicts with one of our other conditions, that there's no at-grade crossing.
Right.
Now, the research I did is not local, not recent, but I've been involved in MBTA properties and projects, and I had an opposite experience in Newton dealing with the Woodland train station, where the neighbors, when we tried to do a redevelopment, came out of the woodwork, and they said it's an absolute horrible condition because at 2 in the morning when they're bagging metal and they're running the station, running the trains, because that's the only time that they could do it, and these people were past angry. It was frustrated because they wouldn't get any response, and the response that they did get was, we are the MBTA and we're somewhat autonomous. We don't listen to the neighbors because we're a separate entity. And it was a miserable group of meetings that I went to, and there was no resolution. So, which brings us back to the original one. If this if this station, according to the MOU and the letter that we got, is required to have a overnight station. Why were we not told about it? Why was it we don't know until after the pilot's done? When clearly, it's a requirement that the land has to be given up to the MBTA, and there's provisions about everything else on there. So the private-public partnership does not include the town, because we've not even seen this complete MOU. If there's sound walls and it's inside, like somebody had said, I haven't seen the report, that may appease the situation, but Mr. Fawaz, and genuinely came up and said he's interested in getting more information. There was another gentleman at the last meeting, Mr. Kasha, has said the same thing. These are residents. All we're doing is looking for information. If it was any other developer that came in to Foxboro, even on the Kraft property, there would be light studies, there would be noise studies, there would be parking studies, but yet we're asked to believe in what the MBTA is doing, and their track record is absolutely horrible dealing with neighbors. Now, a couple weeks ago, there was a overnight running of trains, and there was the public announcement that, again, we're sorry that the trains have been delayed. We ran them all night, and we're still delayed. So it happens. So my concern is the people on North Street, after the pilots run, and the MBTA comes in, and the Kraft organization says this is where the station is going to be, there's no recourse, there's no checks and balances, and we get a bad situation. It could be the worst or it could be the best, but without that information, is it too much to ask for the MBTA and the Kraft Group to come here and show an aerial and say, this is where Exhibit 1 is, this is the site, this is the process that we're going to go through, let's run the pilot program, and if it's so good for the west side of Route 1 and all the areas, let's figure out a way to put these trains inside, because, I often hear when you live next to a big development like the Patriots or the train, buyer beware, that's what you get. I also look at it that there is an equal responsibility. If you do a development next to residential, then there's a responsibility to do some mitigation. So if there's a sound barrier going in, and if the building's inside, so be it. But this board has no information. We don't even have the agreement or the location other than trust us. I trust the Kraft Group. I do not trust the MBTA answering a phone once this thing's done. They've already said we're not really privy to working with them over the next year on the checks and balances. That was in the letter also. So a little long-winded, but a little courtesy to this table, to this board from the MBTA goes a long way in making us feel comfortable that once the pilot's done, we can look at the neighbors and say, we either missed the boat or, we let something go by.
Well, I think that's what the whole pilot program's for. Now, they are required by the Federal Transit Administration and the Railroad Administration to do sound studies and take regular sound readings as part of any layover facility or any train station to make sure that any mitigation required for abutters is taken care of. So I understand where you're coming from.
Let me ask you, is it too much to ask to have they have another meeting in Boston coming up? I don't know if any of us are going to go or if we have the time to do that, but asking the MBTA and the Kraft Group to give us a presentation that says this is where the site's going to go. And moving forward, yes, we'll come back to you and we'll work with you guys. But short of that, we have no information on this.
But I don't think they know where the site's going. They have a couple of sites identified.
If you look at the MOU, there's one site that's identified and they've signed on the dotted line, it is going there. If they move it, then there's a process going back and forth.
Yeah.
But unless somebody else has that memorandum of understanding with the map, right now, from my discussions with the Kraft Group, it's down in the corner of North Street and Route 1. And the previous study says that train is going to cross North Street and have to come back. That's the only information I have.
Right.
So, and again, I support moving forward because it appears that, people have embraced this. But any other project would come in front of us with a site plan or a sketch on a napkin or something. And if it was anybody but the MBTA, I would trust them on this, but I just don't on this particular one.
Can I speak? Yeah. This plan was based on a 2010 study on the possibility of Foxboro train station. And even though it's 2017, the study was done in 2010, it's still viable, it's still important because that's what you consider long-range planning. So what was discussed in 2010 is as important in 2017 as it was in 2010. And on page 103 of the study, they described the Foxboro layover facility, and I don't think we have heard the full description, because when this first came up, I was under the impression the layover would just be one train, and I was concerned about one train laying over. It's not going to be just one train. It's going to be a regional layover facility, and let me describe it to you. The MBTA Railroad Operations Directorate has indicated that any full-time service to Foxboro must address the existing layover deficiencies on the Franklin branch. Where the facility is located, it is assumed the authority would build a 6-track facility capable of storing 6 850-foot-long train sets, 1 locomotive and 9 coaches. Railroad Operations has further stated that the new facility would not have to be a double-ended facility, which means it has to go in and out to go back and forth. While this would save some capital costs, the primary disadvantage of a single-ended facility is that if there is a derailment at the facility entrance, rail traffic will not be able to exit or enter the facility. A crew building would be constructed on site, which would include a materials and equipment storage locker. This will allow mechanical personnel to store materials on site and perform running repairs to equipment. The facility's entrance would be paved and have parking for at least 15 cars. There would be 3 20-foot wide service lanes and 4 4-foot wide walkways built between the tracks. High mass lighting with walkway lights would be located at the service walkways. The entire layover facility would be fenced in, and if necessary, noise walls would be constructed. There is absolutely no mention of these trains going in a building to be worked on in a building. They're going to be outside. They're going to be outside being worked on at all hours of the night, because you cannot, if you're going to repair trains, you do it at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, because they have to be up and running by 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I did a little history of this, and in the 2000, I read the whole 2010 study, and we all got a copy of it. I don't know whether you guys read it, the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. I read it. What bothers me about the study is the study is based on information. At the time the study was done, the big part of it is allowing parking. The time the study was done, the craft organization agreed not to charge for parking. And that's what the study was based on. The information was using that there would be no parking fees. Well, if you provide free parking, you are going to get, and you have 500 spaces, you are going to get 500 cars, which means if that's the case in the pilot program, which is based on ridership, then automatically that pilot program is skewed, because eventually they will have to charge for parking. As a matter of fact, in the present MOU, they say they're going to charge for parking. That's the first thing. The second one is all I hear is based on economic development. And on page 119 to page 120 of the study, it says, they're talking about reverse commutes, which means coming out of Boston to the Foxboro area. And they state that there's the chance of reverse, it's a small reverse commute. Reverse commute expected to be relatively small. It's stressed that this is for economic development. We can bring people from Boston. Their own study says it's not really based on economic development. The study says this would be viable if there were more, if it was housing, if it was based on the need because of housing, then this would make sense. I do not believe, I don't believe that for the cost for the town of Foxborough to have an overlay facility, a regional overlay facility to take care of trains from the Forge Park route and all that stuff, to the detriment of the people on North Street in that part of town. I don't believe that the station at Foxborough is warranted. We have stations at Walpole, Sharon, Mansfield. The lady from Walpole a couple of weeks ago said that the Walpole parking lot is not filled. We have an additional parking for the Mansfield station dedicated to Foxborough people, which goes unfilled. I just think that for the expense to the state, we're running at a deficit in the state. As it is, every commuter rail loses money. This is no different, and the study said it'll probably lose more money than the others. But the big thing is, you're inviting the MBTA to come in, and believe me, when they come in and take over. You are giving them the right to go in and put a layover facility, and you go to other areas where they have layover facilities, and they would love to get rid of them. When I was up at the State House, the representative from the town of Attleboro took him years to get the layover facility out of Hebronville. The only reason it got out of there was because the feds finally built something down in Pawtucket, and they were able to do the layover. Hebronville was beside itself because of the layover. It was so disruptive. So my question is, why in God's name would the town of Foxborough invite an entity like the MBTA to come in and kind of take over that end of town when their own study says for economic development, it's really not that big deal? I don't understand what if the craft organization is going to build their big facility on Route 1, and I think I saw it when I went to the planning board, and I'm pretty sure there's a parking garage there, it means they expect people to drive to work. People are not going to be coming out of Boston to go to work. And then then I hear about the millennials want to take trains. And they're in Boston, they'll get a job in Foxborough. Well, let me tell you something. The millennials grow up, the millennials get married, the millennials start having kids. You can't raise a kid in a South Boston condo. What you do is, if you work in Foxborough, you come out, you buy a house in Foxborough, Walpole, Norfolk to be close to work so you can drive to work. Because you want to be in a wonderful town like Foxborough that has plenty of a good school system, playing fields, everything for families. You're not going to be catering. We shouldn't be catering to supposed reverse commuters, because it's not going to happen. I just don't think this is, I really am opposed to this because of the layover. It's going to destroy that area of town.
Mr. Chairman, is it too much to ask, and I don't know the entire schedule, but to have the MBTA come in and/or the craft group, whoever has jurisdiction over this, to let us know what's happening with the layover station concept? Because this is the biggest thing. I agree with a lot of stuff that you're saying. I disagree. I think a train station would benefit Foxborough for many different reasons. You look at the one that went in Franklin. It built up, that whole industrial park. Flip side is they got the most number of residential permits in the entire state after it, so there's a detriment with a benefit. But that, I think we can figure that out, or at least understand what's coming down the road. But the layover station is a lot bigger than I imagined, and the fact that nobody mentioned that it was a done deal until we find out afterwards, backdoor.
Right. So I think you have to take a look at the 2010 feasibility study. That was based on DMUs and a different program. Okay? The presentation that they made is vastly different than that 2010 feasibility study. Now, you were correct in saying that it's 2017.
Hmm.
When you do feasibility studies, things change, administrations change. Now they have an oversight board. They're using existing equipment, okay? It doesn't make sense for them to use Foxboro as a regional layover facility, because that means they're deadheading trains on the Franklin line, on the Framingham line, on the Fairmont line. That's what they're trying to avoid, from what I understand. During the pilot program, they can't do a layover in Foxborough because it's only a single track. But what they did say is that we can, I guess, schedule a layover just to see what it would be like, and I'm assuming do a sound study at that point. But to do a layover, they're gonna have to add tracks, and they don't wanna do that
During the pilot
During the
study.
pilot program.
But just as a reminder, when we had the presentation 2 years ago, and the MBTA came out and said, where this will not be regular trains, we are gonna have DMUs, which are much quieter than the trains that we have now. So now, 2 years later, they're not gonna do DMUs. They're gonna use the trains, the loud trains that they had, that they said they weren't gonna have 2 years ago. They're gonna have that now.
Right.
So,
Well, during the
They go-
layover, they plug in
but they're still loud.
when they, right, and there's gonna be sound walls.
You hope. How do you know?
That,
Going based on what I saw in Situate, and its standard procedure, they're doing it along the highways now. There's gonna be sound walls if it impacts the neighbors. They have to do the sound study.
Yeah, but you know, the MBTA really does have a credibility problem. When they were making the presentation in Walpole, one of the residents asked, well, what about the schedules? And the woman actually said to him, well, we don't have schedules, we haven't gotten that far. If you look in the 2010 study, they have schedules for everything. They have everything.
right.
They have figured it out. They know exactly what they're gonna do. And the layover in Foxborough is one of the things they're gonna do, a 6-track layover. Because they're gonna take, it's gonna take the layover from the Franklin branch in Forge, whatever it is. Forge Park. And that's gonna come to Foxborough. We are gonna be the regional layover.
I
I think
disagree with
we're all
that. So,
speculating, right?
so I think we need to move this forward, okay? But I understand where you're coming from as far as the layover. I don't think they can give us a definitive answer on the layover. We can schedule a meeting, we can have them come in, have the craft group come in and do another presentation. But I don't think we're gonna get any more information than what we already have. I know as far as the schedules are concerned, they don't have a schedule because they have to change the Fairmont schedules to accommodate the Foxborough train, because it's gonna be on the Fairmont line.
Right, and
it's
this
an
wouldn't
extend-
actually
it
occur until another year from the year
Right.
or 18 months from now.
But the thing is, and I've said it before, the pilot is disingenuous if they're not gonna include a layover, if they're only gonna have 4 peak trains, because when you have permanent service, you're gonna have like 32 trains, and it's gonna be during the weekend. What you're giving what you're being presented in the pilot is the palatable service. It's palatable, so you go, okay, this is great. Then the real stuff comes, and the real stuff is the layover, the 32 trains a day back and forth, the maintenance at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's gonna be the reality, and you know what? You're stuck with it.
Dave,
And that's the problem.
Can I ask, I don't want to go down the path of making do extra tracks for a year if it never happens. It's a waste of taxpayer monies and what have you. So to do a second or a third line so the freight trains can get by, and then you find out 11 months from now it's not going to work, it doesn't do anybody any good. But I think this board does have valid questions when, I'm not looking at 2 years ago or 16 years ago in the 2000 study. I'm looking at a month and a half ago when the MBTA said, we don't know if there's gonna be a layover. Somebody's not being truthful, or they sent the B team that doesn't know what the heck's going on. Because if you looked at the signed agreement, there is gonna be a layout over. So I think we owe the town an opportunity to hear it directly from one of the two entities of where it's gonna go. Will it have a sound barrier? Will it have a house? We may be concerned about nothing because they might say standard is, we put it in a 200-foot building, and it's heated, and there's a couple bathrooms and and the issue goes away. But to move forward, especially after a month ago, when, again, how can they say we don't know when they have a written agreement that they do know?
I'll have to go back and watch the tape, because I didn't hear, we didn't know. What I heard was there won't be a layover during the pilot program.
And then after the pilot program, will there be a layover? And did they say yes? They said,
I don't think they ever answered the question.
Well, in the MOU, it says.
They
because the
did
MO
answer it, they did answer in the letter,
writing.
they answered it in your letter.
But in the
after we made the condition.
Yeah, but in the MOU, it says it addresses, they agreed to address the regional layover problem. That's right in the MOU. It's one of the, so
So the harm in 2 weeks for having them come back and answer that specific question, they may have drawings in a patent answer that says this is what we do, just like, and I'd like to go down and see the Situate. I don't know how that's run, but.
See, unfortunately, I was gonna invite you and invite Jenny, but because of the open meeting law. This is where the
We'll
open
have a
meeting.
meeting.
A way to get around that is you just say,
We'll
this
just have a
is
meeting.
where you can go, and I'm a big boy, I can drive and
Yeah.
find it.
So, but yeah, I strongly encourage you to go to Situate in the Greenbush line.
Mhm.
I think it'll be well worth your while.
Okay.
The way I see a pilot program is it's a test. It's the test to see if it's gonna work. Back in November, we voted 4-1 to move ahead. Yeah, we set some conditions. They came back. I think we still have to move ahead and get together with them in the next few weeks and just start forming a partnership and working through these things. But I'm in favor of just moving the test forward to see if it's gonna work or not and work out the differences.
And we can't wait 2 weeks to make that decision.
Well,
So we make the decision in 2 weeks, they come and say, yeah, we're sorry, we misspoke, there's gonna be a grandiose plan there, and, I don't understand
Yeah.
not having that information, why we can't get
No,
it.
I think part of it's a chicken and egg issue, because I think the reason why I don't know that there is a specific location that's been identified at this point, because the problem is that if it's not if there's no commitment by the town to support this, then there isn't any kind of investment or action is going to be taken to try and locate that. So the problem is that if you don't move forward with the process, there's no commitment indicating that we're going to look at this and really truly study it. That's the challenge you're faced with, and I know that the questions you're asking, they're fair questions, but I think that some of those questions can't be answered until you actually commit to the process.
no, that's like,
That's
that's
not
like
true,
the
Bill.
Obamacare. That we'll read the bill when you can read the bill after we pass the bill.
Well, the
No.
reason I say that is because there are substantial dollars committed to doing that in order to achieve that. So in other words, you wouldn't expect anybody to commit dollars to a program unless there was a commitment to support it.
So if we reached out to the T in the craft group and said, all right, our next meeting, number one on the agenda,
Mhm.
we want to discuss the layover and see if you have any finalized plans or even know
Mhm.
where the layover is going to be. And at that meeting, we'll commit to either saying, yay, we're going to move forward, or no, we're going to withdraw our support. Is there any harm in
I think that's
in doing that?
reasonable.
No, I have questions since we got a hold of the MOU and we got a hold of the 2010 study. I have more questions.
I think that's what Dave's saying, if
Right,
they come in
yeah.
2 weeks, you
Right.
would be able to ask
Well,
whatever
and I
questions
would
you
like
have.
them to be prepared
But
to answer our questions.
one thing I would like for you to do is, if you have time, go
Mhm.
visit a layover facility.
Mhm.
Because you can hear them say all these things,
Mhm.
and you might believe them, you might not believe them,
Mhm.
but it was enlightening seeing what goes on there.
Mhm.
I think it's well worth the trip.
How many tracks is there?
there's 5 tracks there. 4 of them are tracks that they use.
Okay, but how many trains
There's 3.
lay over?
There's 3 train sets there. They have one primary, because it's on full-time service, they're running 2 trains at a time, and then one's a spare set.
Is that also a maintenance facility?
No.
But that's the facility that they told you to go look at?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it would relate to
Right,
what's
all
going on.
all their heavy maintenance is done in Reeville, and they're not gonna move that because they're not gonna have, heavy parts all over the state.
Right.
What they do in Situate is they have brake shoes, light bulbs, and routine maintenance items that are inside the car. They don't do any heavy maintenance outside. There's no fueling, provisions. If all the fuel is done at South Station or Reeville. If they do need fuel, they bring an oil truck in. So it's pretty benign what goes on there. They do have a building. It houses, a couple offices, a locker room, and a small machine shop. And the machine shop is just for machining and grinding down, brake shoes.
Brake shoes.
The MBTA is, they're renegotiating union contracts, they're doing all this stuff to try to save money. One of the things that they have decided upon is to have their maintenance, like, coordinate their maintenance, be under one area. Who's to say that our regional layover facility would not be the maintenance facility? Do you know that? That's a question I'd like to ask.
It would never happen because it's coming across a single track. You would have such backup coming through Walpole, and they certainly don't want to run heavy trains through, heavy dose of continuous trains through Walpole.
Yeah,
for
but they could
maintenance.
go down to Mansfield
They
and
will
then
not go,
come back.
they will not go down through
No,
Mansfield.
because they are going to, one of the things they're gonna do
I can address
is to
that.
upgrade the Framingham secondary rails that go down through Mansfield to Providence.
I can address that
So
issue,
so they could do that.
because I actually worked in a community right next to the Reedville line, and if you go to that Reedville station, there are multiple tracks in that area for that reason, because quite honestly, there is no capability to do that in this current arrangement here. There may be some additional tracks needed to have a overnight facility, but that is no way set up at all like the Reedville situation at all. I mean, it's completely different. There are multiple track stations there.
So
Yeah, but this is gonna be a brand new facility.
Right, but that
They
would-
could do
but you
anything,
would
and
need-
because you know what? It's the MBTA, they will be able to do anything.
But you would need you need tracks in both directions. They don't have that.
There's not
in that
enough
area.
land there
There's
to
not
do
enough
a
land to make that
regional
happen.
station.
Well,
So
There's not enough right away.
Let's do this. We can keep going round and round. Let's reach out to the T. Okay? I want to put this thing to bed, but I want to make sure, I want as much support from the board as possible. And if we have members that are looking for more information, we should try and get them that information. We'll schedule for the next meeting. We'll see if we can get the MBTA there. Hoping the craft group will be there. Hopefully they'll be back from the Super Bowl by then. Winners. And then we'll have them give us a presentation on the layover. Hopefully some of the members can go and see the layover facility in Situate. And, come back, we'll ask the questions, and then we'll bring it to a vote, whether support or not support. And then we'll put this thing behind us once and for all.
fair enough. Thank you for doing it.
I have a question.
Yep.
As it is right now, I thought there was a 4-to-1 vote for the town approval. I'd suggest you retake that vote and negate it for no approval or approval. Either way, just no.
We're gonna continue it, till the next meeting.
I think the approval stands because one of the conditions is there's no layover, so if they go forward, there can't be a layover. So I don't think we want to rescind everything.
No. Yep. And this will be the last question. Oh,
Yes,
one
no.
more.
But I think it's an important question for you to get the answer to. When they bought the line that we're talking about, all the way through Mansfield, they justified that by saying in Walpole to us that this was going to be a backup for emergency use. And they own that whole line. And so eventually, if they need to do emergency work, they can go all the way from Walpole to Mansfield. Now, if they can do that, find out if they can go from Mansfield to Foxboro, because that would bring in Providence, Stoughton, that whole group of trains that they would probably want to move and come to here. So I think it's very important to find out how they justified the purchase of this rail from CSX, because CSX was going to abandon it, and they bought it for backup.
Okay, thank you.
Just a really quick comment. I promise that I'll be brief, but I hope that everyone here. Sorry.
Give us your name.
My name's Leah Gibson. I live on Fairway Lane. I've been a Foxborough resident for my entire life, except for maybe 6 years. But I hope that everyone on this board can come into this with a non-biased opinion and do the research like Mr. Feldman does. So hearing things like hearsay about, you know, a layover station in Attleboro in the past, or no one's going to raise a 2-year-old in a South Boston condo, were just comments to me that, you know, right away just kind of surprised me. So I hope we can all go into it with the facts. And, you know, I know it's tough to take those types of personal beliefs out, but I think everyone in this room wants what's best for the community and the town. So
thank you.
Leah, I can assure you, I have read a lot. I've done my homework, as I usually do.
Right, I'm just saying, I hope everyone can visit a layover station like Mr. Feldman did. And, you know, I think that there's people that want to come in and out of this town. We live between Boston and Providence. We're lucky. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll reach out to take.
So this item will be continued to February 7th.
Yep. All right. We'll take our 7:45, a little late. Regional Emergency Communications Center, discussion, consideration, possible vote.
I think the discussion will be good next time. To hear it. Pick the closer one.
We need a 2-minute break, Mr. Chairman. They're just trying to set that up for the presentation.
Yeah, we'll, actually, you want to do a couple action items?
Sure.
Setting up?
Yeah.
Ready for some action items? All right. Move to approve a revised one-day wine and malt beverage license application for February 2nd, 2017, to include a rain date of February 9th, 2017, for Fairway Independent Mortgage.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve a gift donation in the amount of $100 to the Animal Control for services from David Brinker.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $25 to the Council on Aging to support programs and services in memory of Jolene Ganarn from Jocelyn Tripp.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve a one-day beer and wine license for Saturday, January 28th and Sunday, January 29th, 2017, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., with a rain date of February 4th, 2017, for Power Sports Sales Event.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
And lastly, move to approve a one-day entertainment license for Motorcycles of Manchester for Saturday, January 28th, 2017, with a rain date of February 4th, 2017, for Power Sports Sales Event.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
Okay, we're ready to go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and introduce this item for you, this next item for you. For the board actually attended a meeting last week with the two other boards, or three other boards rather, from Norton, Mansfield, and Easton, to talk about the top issue of regional dispatch. And under what will be known under this discussion tonight as the Regional Emergency Communications Center, otherwise known as the REC for short terms. And the members of that, we met a very detailed presentation that evening. We're going to try to condense that for everyone tonight, because since we already presented that earlier, we will go through the major slide presentation that was done at the meeting that night. So for everybody in Foxboro's interest and understanding of this topic as well. But the members of the team that were present that evening were Mansfield Police, Norton Police, Mansfield Fire, Norton Fire, Foxboro Police, Easton Police, Foxboro Fire, Easton Fire, State 911, the architecture firm and engineers, Castle Blues Associates, Horizon Communications, Foxboro Finance, Foxboro Administration, Norton Administration, Easton Administration, Mansfield Administration, and Executive Office of Public Safety. At that evening, what we did was discuss the topic of regional dispatch and why it's become such an important topic for this area and for the state as a whole. For many years, dispatch has been conducted on individual basis on each individual towns, with Massachusetts being one of the few remaining states in the country that does not do it on a regional basis. It has become a hot topic in the past several years, is because the administration and the Executive Office of Public Safety has indicated that what they'd like to do is to form these regional centers in an attempt to make better use of the funding that is now available on everyone's cell phone bill and telephone bill. You see that emergency communication line. Those monies actually come back to each individual city and town currently. And what's happened is what they've done through evaluation of those calls, realized that the actual E911 calls are actually pretty minimal when it comes to each of the towns individually. If you look at them on an average basis, we get about 10 calls per day, and as a whole, the group gets about 40 calls a day. What the state is trying to do is to take those dollars that come to us now and to pool those dollars into regional centers so that they can make better use of new equipment, better training, better capabilities for handling E911 calls. There are lots of questions that came out of this, that have come out of this discussion. A lot of it was those questions were based on information that was they only had limited information about the topic. What we tried to do that night was to answer a lot of those questions so that everybody could feel comfortable with the concept. We also had Senator James Timilty presented that evening. He was actually the author of some legislation that created the E911 concept, and that is the legislation that we're working under. The E911 concept was acted on by both the House and the Senate, and was unanimously approved by both House and Senate when that topic came on board. I think at this point, what I'd like to do is to go over the actual slide presentation. Deputy Chief Kelleher, can you run that for me, please? This gives you a good overview of what actually the presentation, of how this came about and the history of it, and why we're here today. Take a second to warm that up. I think if you bring up your screen, it'll be okay. Here it comes. I want to trim those lights in the front here so everybody can see that a little bit better.
The towns involved in this effort are part of a growing area of the Northeast for residential and commercial development alike. Within a 60-mile radius of these four communities, you can account for over 52% of the population of New England. And the same reasons that make such similar communities so attractive are the reasons why we are facing similar challenges for public safety. Large entertainment venues, public and private educational institutions, rapidly growing residential and commercial development, easy access to the busiest rail line in the Northeast and major highways running through each town. To fully understand where we are going, we need to see where we started and what we do now. Dispatch was originally handled by each individual department, with one on-duty firefighter or police officer assigned to this duty on a rotating basis. This position was secondary to their main duties. The number of emergency runs and call traffic was much less. The training demands and certifications were limited or simply non-existent. The technology and equipment was much less sophisticated. Dispatch was run with a time clock, a typewriter, and a radio. Cell phones were non-existent. This all changed, and as we grew, every town recognized the need for the job of dispatching to evolve into a separate and professional component of public safety. Collectively, towns realized that this system led to large gaps between experience and proficiency for members working on the desk. The transfer of emergency calls between police and fire was inefficient and dangerous. Reliance on mutual aid, which had not been prevalent except for large-scale emergencies, was rapidly increasing. Finally, one member of each side of public safety was taking off the road on each shift to dispatch. This was simply not cost-effective. In the final analysis, communities recognized the need for change, which led us to how we operate today. Currently, each town employs a combined dispatch center for both police and fire. A small group of specifically trained professionals per town is responsible for answering and dispatching 911 calls, as well as a host of other duties, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. The technology has changed dramatically, with multiple computers and monitors part of every task from mapping to log entry to call taking. Training too has increased. Certifications must be maintained, and attention to learning the specifics of dispatch is every day. Emergency medical dispatch, known as EMD, must be employed on every medical call and must be reviewed constantly. Mutual aid has become a routine part of daily emergency calls. In short, dispatch has developed into a separate professional component of public safety, working in conjunction with, but distinct from, police and fire. So why change? The current system is not without issues. Aging and failing infrastructure must be addressed. The position has strayed from its primary function and has become a catch-all for many jobs that distract from the mission. The importance of EMD has increased, and not only must be done on all medical calls, but must be reviewed by a supervisor. A reliance on small pools of employees per town forces dispatchers to work significant overtime, which leads to a reduction in personal efficiency, high turnover, and unsustainable costs. In its current format, annual funding from State 911, which is a key in maintaining systems and training, will be cut as the state looks to reduce the 241 community dispatch centers into more efficient, workable models. Improvement to systems and infrastructures relying on funding from local competitive capital improvements methods where dollars are already stretched thin. The increase in the use of mutual aid means that collectively we must move towards using the same systems and speak the same language. So what have we done to begin to move forward? In 2014, police and fire departments from Easton, Mansfield, Norton, and Foxboro joined together to apply for State 911 grant to study the feasibility of developing a regional emergency communications center, also known as a REC. The 2-year study considered the existing conditions, including current center operations, staffing, call volume, technical systems, facilities, training, quality assurance, and emergency medical dispatch. The study also confirmed that under the Acts of 2014, Chapter 500, communities had the ability to create 911 emergency communications districts. Police, fire, and town managers from each town formed committees to further explore the specifics of a regional effort and report back to the board on the value. Through a comprehensive study, the committee determined that the most effective site to be the current police building in Mansfield, which will be available due to the construction of a new public safety complex in that community and already contains valuable infrastructure to transition the structure into a new regional center. This is an opportune time to be part of the decision-making for the REC. In an attempt to consolidate the number of answering points in Massachusetts, the state is reducing funding to those not involved in regional efforts. Moving forward with this effort will allow us to maintain and even increase funding while determining the fate of our communities. Uniquely, each discipline in all 4 towns believe in the creation of the REC and collectively feel that it's better to drive the bus than get run over by it. By forming this new rec, the communities will be able to access specific grant money that will approximately double our annual grants awards. These same funds will be reduced and eventually eliminated for standalone PSAPs. The state will further fund all equipment and infrastructure for interoperability for all 4 communities. They will fund computer-aided dispatch hardware and software, record management systems, facility upgrades, security, dispatch consoles, furniture, and phone systems. In short, the construction, outfitting, and systems development of the entire project. The formation of a regional communications center offers significant benefits to each community. It improves regional decision-making, interoperability with upgrades and new equipment. It enhances dispatcher communications through better supervision and QA/QI, and it allows superior resource and information sharing in one facility with one IT person and improved access to information. Benefits also include standardized technology usage, more efficient procurement and contracting, increased efficiencies and savings for upgrading of infrastructure and equipment, enhanced education and training for public safety dispatchers, which leads to a significant decrease in liability to each community. The entire project can be accomplished over a 2 to 3 year time frame, in which significant project funding will be available annually through State 911. Ensuring a positive staffing model is one of the development areas key to the success of a regional dispatch. The working committee spent considerable time and effort researching alternative models used in functioning centers. Research shows that there are 168 hours that need to be filled for each console to cover 24 hours for a 7-day week. Working the traditional 40-hour work week only covers 160 hours, leaving an 8-hour gap for each console. By increasing the work week by 2 hours and putting dispatchers on a 4-day, 12-hour shift, the entire center can cover the entire 168-hour week without the need for part-time employees. This was found to be the most efficient model and maximizes staffing. Each shift would have a working supervisor that would serve to oversee QA/QI, supervisory issues, and be able to enhance staffing in high volume times. The communication director will manage all aspects of the facility, including staff, operations, and budget issues. The director answers to boards made up of town managers and chiefs from each community. The IT and communication specialist was found to be a critical position in an area of critical need for all 4 towns. In fairness to the employees, we would propose to rotate day and night shifts. We also propose an impact shift from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. to handle increased volume during that time, again maximizing efforts while minimizing cost. There is built-in relief with this model to contain overtime costs. This allows one employee to be on paid time off before there is a need to hire a replacement on overtime. One of the largest areas of controversy in regards to regional dispatch centers is typically the split of how towns pay. In many cases, there are very small communities lumped in with larger, busier towns or cities. However, in this case, the 4 towns involved are uniquely similar in size, call volume and type, policies and procedures, and response patterns. The result is that the largest town is not the busiest in terms of call volume, and the smallest town is not the slowest. That is why we propose an even 25% split on costs. In general, by sharing the burden of operation, including staffing, equipment, training, and building and grounds, each community will see a savings, particularly over the long term. Thank you for listening. We hope this presentation offered an explanation of our efforts to form a regional dispatch center. You can find this presentation, along with frequently asked questions, on the website from each community.
Thank you, Deputy. We will actually have that presentation up and running tomorrow, so since we presented it tonight for the first time to the entire community. So we will have that operational tomorrow. The rest of the presentation that evening focused on some of the more specific aspects of police dispatching from both a police perspective, a fire perspective, and just from the regional operation of a center. We brought in George Foskey, who was is a 911 consultant on who works on a national level and works on these projects all around the country. He has. We also heard from Chief Kevin Partridge from the Eastern Fire Department, and Chief Ron Sellen from the Mansfield. It was the Mansfield Police Chief. Chief Sellen is here tonight, in case there's any questions on that level, but certainly our fire department can answer. And I know the chiefs from Mansfield are here as well, who can also answer further questions about the fire operations. We also heard about the facility itself and how that will be structured and assembled. And that was from the architecture firm of Castle Booz Associates, who was retained by the group to evaluate that process, and they have plans in place to start construction on that as soon as the commitment is made by all 4 communities. The group then heard from Randy Scollins, the finance director from Foxboro, who presented the financial aspects of this and why this did make sense from our collective perspectives. It's interesting that almost about all 4 communities are almost identical in terms of their expenditures. The one caveat was that the town of Norton would actually achieve the greatest amount of savings because they will retain, they currently have a police officer working in the front desk, and they will retain that position, so therefore there was no longer further need for retooling those positions in the various town operations and the current dispatch centers. Each of the communities we assumed a cost of about $300,000 to maintain a presence in the 911 centers, in the individual town centers, so that we would have a presence 24/7, so that anyone who walked into the police fire complex would in fact have someone respond to them directly based upon their inquiry. At the end of the day, there were a couple things that made sense. One is the fact that there was a savings to each of the communities directly in terms of just operations by approaching it from this perspective. But further and probably more importantly is the fact that each of the centers were evaluated from a physical equipment perspective to determine if in fact that equipment was up to date and really reflected the current practices on a national level. There is new technology in this area that we're currently not utilizing, but where we could actually utilize on a regional basis. The state 911 state Office of Public Safety has indicated that they would support us in the regional center in replacing all of that equipment with up-to-date new equipment for the new center, but it would fund that equipment as opposed to doing it on an individual town basis. The cost of replacing that equipment on an individual town basis is about $1 million. That funding would not be supported by the state if we continued on our current individual approach. I think we then talked about the governance agreement, went through that piece of it. We've had that reviewed by several attorneys. That's still a little bit of a work in process. I think we're getting close to finalizing that. The board is not being asked to sign that agreement tonight, but we would be asking for your support tonight to move forward to the next piece. There are 2 key dates that are important here. One is the fact that there is a grant request that's due on February 1st that requires the support of the communities in order to get the architecture and design services that are required for the new rec center. And then March 1st is the opportunity for us, the deadline for us to apply for E911 funds to support the new center itself, the operations center, which would allow us the ability to move forward with hiring the appropriate personnel to start that process, i.e. a new director, and start the process of looking at how we would proceed with the actual steps of putting the center together. The center itself would not be operational till sometime in the spring of 2019. That would be the first opportunity that we would see to have to see that building open, since the new building that's being currently constructed in Mansfield would then be completed by that period of time. The Mansfield Police Department has agreed to work with us to help coincide with the construction of a new E911 center in that facility even during the construction phase of their new facilities, so that we would be ready to be operational in the spring of 2019. That is our present goal. That is the reason why we're here before you now to talk about this, and because for the 2 grant opportunities, and furthermore that the time is starting to shrink in terms of when we would be able to actually have this place operational. Clearly, there were a lot of things that we need to address between now and 2 years from now. I think the last thing I want to just mention tonight, and I certainly will ask ask the board if they have further questions, and certainly there are other experts here in the room tonight that can talk to that, is the fact that we know that this particular proposal does impact the current staffing of our dispatch center. We recognize that, and we also are very sensitized to that in the belief that we would still want to train our folks to the highest degree possible so they could compete for those positions. The reality is that with the 25-person staffing requirement of the new center and a collective number of 40 candidates for all of the positions in the positions in the 4 towns, there would not obviously be enough positions to be fulfilled by that situation. However, that being the case, it's incumbent upon us, I believe, to train people to the highest possible way we can so they can become eligible for other centers that are going to be opening up across this region as well. I just, this past weekend, spoke with the town manager from Franklin, and who indicated that they are further along in their process. They'll be opening their center probably about a year from now as opposed to 2 years from now. So and the reality of the situation is this. If we decide not to do this and not move forward in this direction, there are 2 things that are going to happen that we are virtually certain of. One is that the E911 funds will eventually dry up, and they will be dedicated to those regional centers. And then the next piece will that be the state will actually eventually say to us, you have to join a regional center. And the reason why we want to be in a position now to sort of drive the bus, as the comments were said in the presentation, is because the 4 communities that have worked in this process for the past 2 years get along extremely well. We work really well together, and we're really closely aligned. I think one of the reasons I think there's been an example cited is I think Beverly was one of the areas that didn't work very well. But there was a significant difference between Beverly and the remaining communities that actually they tried to group with. There was also another piece of that people don't talk about, is the fact that the funding was made available to them before they actually started to actually formulate their ideas. So it was a backwards approach. We've taken the time to really study this quite in detail. I think the public safety folks who have worked in this have done a terrific job of trying to look at every aspect possible. Do we know all the answers at this point? We certainly don't, and I'll be the first person to tell you, and I think everybody here would tell you that. But we do have learned from a lot of the centers that have already been created throughout the state and across the country. So we're trying to use the best practices that have already been established across the country for setting up this particular center. I think we've learned a lot, and I think at this point in time, we're at a point where we need to move forward on this new initiative. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the presentation I have for tonight. I would certainly defer to any of my colleagues in the room who served on the committee, and certainly anyone who has any questions about the center at this point.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any additional questions that they haven't asked, either prior to this meeting or at the last meeting?
Right, which is just a week ago.
Any other boards beside Mansfield vote on this yet?
Yes, I can. Mansfield voted and Easton voted to support it last night.
Okay. One of the, I guess it's not a question, but a concern is, what if 3 out of the 4 towns say yes? That changes the dollar figures, obviously.
Well, I think what's happened is that there are other communities out there that still need to look at this, and if we already have gone that farther along, if this community decides not to go with us, we certainly could hook on with a couple other communities that would may be interested in doing that. So the good news for them is that we're further along in the process, that they wouldn't need to do as much of the groundwork that we've done. But right now, there's indication that all 4 towns are supportive.
Okay, there were a couple of concerns brought up last week from current dispatches on the 12-hour shifts and then the rotating. Has anything been discussed with your group about that?
I brought that issue back. It's something that we've talked about internally, and bear in mind that that's something that we want to get into further depth with. That model was a national model that was recommended to us as a best practice. However, there was some resistance towards that, indicating that 12 hours is a long period of time. However, there are a lot of dispatchers right now that work double shifts. They'll work 16-hour shifts, and they'll work, they work their regular 8 hours, and they'll work another 8 hours on top of that. But I think the concern is that, the regular 12-hour shift, and then also rotating the hours to every 6 weeks, I guess, was a big concern. And that seems to me like a very legitimate concern that we want to take a look at. But the 12-hour model does seem to have some merit to it, but again, that's something that we would want to have a further discussion with the director of the operation to see if in fact there's another way to address that.
What were you, you said earlier, excuse me, when would you hire the director? If
We'd be
everything-
looking to do something this year on hiring the director. I would say probably sometime in the summer or fall of this year.
So you'd have a director on for 2 years at $120,000 a year. So is that money accounted for in all of the figures that were in that PowerPoint?
It's not. That money would come directly from the state to support the startup process of the center.
One of my other biggest concerns, and I raised it the other night, and I've talked a little bit about it this week, is you've got 40 people that are employed by these 4 towns that you're basically saying you may or may not have a job when we do this. So I'm not a big fan of that at all. I really wish you guys could figure out a way to somehow accommodate that aspect. We're gonna need staff, probably the same amount of staff that we currently have at our facility. Roughly same amount, 9 people to cover.
No, it actually would be a lower amount.
How many people will we need to cover Foxborough?
We looked at about 6, because they had to cover the rotating basis.
So 6
Because
people
don't
are
forget,
gonna
you
cover
have one
100
for fire and police. You would only have one person. There'd be 3 full-time and 3 part-time to cover that shift.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
24/7 days.
And what's the cost gonna be,
About
$300,000?
under $300,000.
So what's the total staff attrition? And when you take into account the rec and then the individual facilities for the local dispatch?
Well, it's conceivable that you would certainly have some attrition during the process, because some folks may not want to go to perform at that level. It's difficult. I don't know the actual breakdown from town to town, if some folks are close to retirement as it is. Others may want to go to a different facility. We certainly want to, our goal is to not have any kind of impact on unemployment to any of these folks, so that we would work with them to outsource them to other places if we could all do that. That's our goal, because we think it's important that they be retained in some way, shape, or form, either with us or through some other agency.
My concern, and I talked to you about it, with the 12-hour shifts. And there's another, the town of Hingham is involved in a regional. Now, what do they do? I keep trying to find out, what do the other regions
I'm going to defer to the chief from Norwell is here,
Oh,
and
okay.
he can actually try and address some of those questions. Okay? Chief? Yeah, come on up. Let's just have a seat at the table, if you wouldn't mind. You can just introduce yourself to the board, please.
Good evening, folks. My name is Andy Ridd, and I'm the fire chief in the town of Norwell. And usually when I'm in front of a board of selectmen, we're talking about my budget. This is a little bit more comfortable. No. The town of Hingham is in what we call the Shrek. It's Hingham, Norwell, Cohasset, and Hull. And our employees work an 8-hour shift. We have 3 shifts. We have the 8 to 4, 4 to midnight, and midnight to 8. We have 4 dispatchers and 1 supervisor on each shift, except the midnight to 8 shift, where we run 1 supervisor and 3 dispatchers.
So under that model, you wouldn't need as many people to do that.
Right, and I'm sitting back there nodding my head because we have overtime issues with people coming and going. It is one of our challenges, as it is with any public safety agency. I'm happy to answer. I don't want to go on. I'm happy to answer questions.
So our proposal was, 6 weeks days, 6 weeks nights, potentially. I mean, nothing's set in stone. When you hire someone, is there a rotating basis also, or do you hire someone for midnights, you hire someone for days, and you hire someone for?
I think that you folks had the opportunity to study some of the challenges that we may not have studied. And we were dealing with a collective bargaining agreement that went forward before we were able to put into place some of our staffing situations. So in order to move the ball, we agreed to a staffing situation of an 8-hour tour based on, I believe it's 37 and a half hours a week, or 37 hours a week. And it has demonstrated itself to be cumbersome. We are in the process, or we have been in the process, of trying to come up with a solution to that.
Well, I guess my question, you certainly weren't there last week when we were in Mansfield, was the one dispatcher that did come up and speak said it would be hard for someone to work 6 hours, 6 weeks of days, and then transition to 6 weeks of nights or overnights, that circadian rhythm and getting the body. So I guess what I'm asking you is yours, when someone works nights, is that their schedule, or do they rotate to days and rotate?
We our employees really they are assigned to the midnight, they are assigned to the mid shift, but they do work oftentimes overtime, both on the day and the mid shift, the afternoon shift. And we have not seen, I have not seen as a chief, a breakdown in performance. I know that I'm very proud of our people. They do a phenomenal job. And, you know, there are certain things that we'd like to do for them. It's just not possible at this time.
Maybe a better way to ask the question, because I think I know what you're trying to get at, is
Yeah.
when they were initially hired, were they hired as a midnight person, were they hired as a 4 to 12 person, or were they hired?
They were
as a-
hired, yes, to answer your question quickly, yes.
Okay.
All right.
But
That's, and then,
So
I
the
think-
job description up front
Yes.
was.
And what typically happens is that occurs, and then they will later bid or to a different shift when that opportunity arises.
You probably have a cycle of
Yeah.
when shift bids come out
They do have-
annually or every 6
Correct.
months.
Right.
But again, and just so the board understands that one of the challenges that we faced was that in order to be the first, we
Yeah.
had to make some decisions. And one of the decisions that we made was to get that collective bargaining document in place. And now we as managers have learned that there may be a better way to peel that out.
To address that, right.
Would it be like longer shifts rather than 8-hour, going to a 10-hour model or a
I
12-hour
think
model?
that, again, when you look at I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of how often people are working overtime, just anecdotally. We have a number of people between sick leave, vacation leave, and a variety of other things that come up with any staff. We have a number of people working overtime on a fairly regular basis. It has been, I don't know if the town managers have talked, but it has been one of our challenges in ways to look to reduce that. And again, we're looking at how we can do that.
Well, I think that what we've learned by the experiences of your rec as well as others is that the schedule is problematic based on that current schedule. So, and that it actually is a little bit more beneficial, I think, even for the employee to a degree, because what's happening is now they have a more regular and predictable schedule as opposed to the one with an 8-hour shift. The chief had something he wanted to say, added to that.
First of all, I want to thank Chief Reardon for being here. I think that the key point in regards to the hours worked is really looking at the national models that are out there. As most of you guys know, I came from the city of Nashua, where I was responsible for, under my part of the operation, a dispatch center that works very similar to the 12 on, 12 off. They work a 10-hour shift for a day. They have the night off. They have the next day off. They do a 14-hour night shift. Then they have a full day off. They repeat that cycle, a day shift, a night shift, and then 4 days off, 3 days off. It's the same schedule that you're looking at without having that 6 weeks, 6 off. We've been doing that for over 25, 30 years in the city of Nashua. That's worked out outstanding for allowing them not to be burnt out and it helps us manage the overtime and keeping it covered by the structure themselves than looking to have all the part-times. And no disrespect to the 888, you have to have a lot of part-time and a lot of overtime to make that system work.
Right.
So very similar to 12 and 12, we did a 10 and 14 in the city of Nashua, and it worked outstanding.
Mhm.
And it's a standard, national standard of how you run an emergency telecommunication network.
So the model that we're proposing is actually a blend of that. It's 12 and 12. So
Right.
I just for the board's edification, I just want you to be aware of, thank you, Chief.
Oh, can I, before you leave,
yeah, sure,
some
no,
questions?
no,
I
was-
don't want to interrupt you,
no,
but I
that's-
wanted to
that's
ask
good.
him
Go
before you
ahead.
left.
Right,
So the
I'm not
selectmen.
leaving, I'm not going anywhere until you guys are done.
Okay, thank you. So the selectmen got together with the four towns, all four groups got together, and towns are provincial in nature, they don't want to share things, so, I mean, a lot of the discussion was speculative, how are we going to share the budget and the staff and the, but it was all speculation because we haven't done this yet. So if you're Hingham, Norwell, Cohasset, and Hull
yeah.
together, how long has that been running?
I think we're on year 7, and I stand to be corrected on
Okay.
that. But
Sounds
because
about
it
right.
feels,
Yeah. All right,
feels
so-
like year 20,000.
So
No,
it's been-
but year 7, from when we started through construction and now operational.
Okay, so going into that meeting, and kudos to Bill, I mean, putting four towns together and getting it to where it is. I went in there with a lot of questions and they were all answered, so I came out very positive. But the questions, again, it's speculation, is, you know, Mrs. Jones on a small street in Foxborough, how is 9/11 gonna reach them from 2 towns over? So now that you've been doing it 6 or 7 years, the response, the technology, one town working with the other.
And again, if I get, my board is used to me, hey, Reardon, we want to go home, go to bed, we have to work tomorrow.
Hey, Reardon, we want to go home.
Okay, I'm out.
I just want to get that kind of summary. Is it working out for you?
I feel like I'm at home.
Just want to make you feel at home.
No, but one of the things that, and I can use a true story. The other day, last Monday, an senior individual in our community needed to call 911. And the good news, you know, he called on his cell phone. So unfortunately, because we're about to become a cell phone answering point. But so we had to go to the state police, and then he had to be transferred. But the good news is the dispatcher was able, because he was very shaken, the situation was dismal on his behalf. But the dispatcher was able to stay on the phone and talk him through what he needed to do while we were able to put police and fire out on the street. And when my staff arrived, they were able to take the phone and say, you know, we're here. And I think our experience with the seniors has probably been the most challenging, because I don't know how Foxboro is, but I still get phone calls in my office. Chief, I really don't want to bother you, but, you know, right now my house is on fire and I'm not sure what I should do. And, you know, again, in today's technology, I'm falling over myself trying to get the information to the right spot. And I think education is going to be the biggest challenge. But in terms of service delivery, again, as a chief and a person that's been around for a little bit, I have seen a dramatic improvement in when the information comes into our center to it being put out in the right direction. Norwell and Hingham are unique. We share 228. There's a section of my town that's easier for my fire trucks, but not for my ambulance to get to. Since we've been able to regionalize and look strategically at how we can better serve our community, some decisions have been made that maybe Norwell will respond an engine and Hingham will respond an ambulance, or vice versa, depending on the nature of the call.
And that wasn't the case before?
There was a magical line in the dirt. I'm not sure where it was, but that has now been erased. And not in all cases, but in most cases, we're able to look beyond that. Again, technology allows us to do this. In the old days, when I started, you know, you had to know where Mary Smith's barn was. We don't do that anymore. We have street addresses because of the requirements and the building code and the fire code. We have to have a street address, and initially, it can be a bit of a challenge if you have people like me who use the old-fashioned terms, but we have to come up to speed and use modern-day technology.
Okay, and last question, I promise. You're chief of Norwell?
Norwell.
Where's the physical building?
The
Hingham.
dispatch center is at
Is in Hingham?
210 Center Street in Hingham.
Hingham, okay.
And
It's actually part of the town hall.
right, it's it used to be Hingham has a light department. They used to occupy this space. We were able to. It sounds like you guys are doing the same thing. Somebody's moving out. We're going to reallocate space, and we were able to position the dispatch center on the second floor of the Hingham Town Hall. And again, it takes me all of 10 minutes. If I have to go over there in person, and initially there was a lot of, let's go over and talk, but again, talking with your professionals this evening, sounds like you folks your communities have worked out a lot of the stuff that we had to learn going along. So if I go over to the dispatch center now, it's to go visit and pick up records that I might need or something, but it's not as often as it was when we first started.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So you have a person in charge of it who's.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have an executive director, we have assistant director, as I said, we have supervisors. Our training is done in-house. We've been able to get our people certified, our supervisors certified, so that some of the foundation training can be accomplished in Hingham or in any one of the fire stations or police stations that happens to have training space. And so that we don't have the delay that used to be present, and may be present in trying to get people into some of the classes. 10% of our EMD is evaluated QA/QI on a regular basis, and that's one of the important things for the fire side of the house. Is are we doing our job from the call that comes in? Are we getting the necessary information out? And again, I don't want to be a braggart, but so far we're doing pretty good.
Just one more question. Going back to staffing, you said that even you had the 8 hours staffing, and you said you still have overtime problems. Are we saying that if we go to 12 hours, that we will not have overtime problems?
It's going to be reduced. It's going to be reduced.
It
quite a
won't
bit.
be eliminated?
It won't be eliminated because they still have vacation time.
Right, there'll still be
and-
vacancies that we'll have
but
to
it's
fill.
gonna be reduced
People
in
get sick,
regards
that type of
to
thing.
the way the shift structure is.
And if it's a 12-hour shift, it's straight time for 12 hours, not
Right. Right.
straight for 8 and then 4 overtime, right?
Right. That's the plan.
If I can, we were very hesitant. Somebody talked about New England being a small town. I live in the same house I grew up in. We've had 4 generations of the same family there. So you can tell how much I adopt the change. But I will tell you that having managed significant incidents, but we pale in comparison to the opportunities or the challenges you face over here. But I will tell you that having managed and supported the management of some significant incidents, having the consolidated dispatch is by far a better choice. When we talk about safety for the first responders, we had a situation where we had 3 firefighters and a civilian down. And, while I'm on the fire ground and several other people are on the fire ground and we're worried about the safety of those people, I've got several people back in dispatch, multitasking, trying to get us the resources that we needed. And so it's not just 1 or 2 people overwhelmed with a 3rd alarm fire with multiple companies, multiple apparatus coming into town, multiple streets being closed down. You had everybody in that center pulling in one direction. And when you talk about the safety of the first responder, you can't really put a dollar on that. But what you can do is say that if our first responders are safe, by extension, our community's a safer place. And I can't say enough. Originally, I was somewhat apprehensive. My town administrator will tell you that he and I had some creative conversations. But I will tell you that now, as I sit here, that I don't know what I would do if I had to go backwards.
Could I make a suggestion? I was just thinking, like a 2-for-1 suggestion. Could we have an official selectmen's meeting, a rolling selectmen's meeting, hit your regional dispatch center, and then hit the layover place in Situate? No, I would really like to, I would really like to see your facility. And also, as long as we were in the area.
Well,
might as well go
you
to Situate.
certainly can do that. There's no.
It's gonna be 1 o'clock in the morning, so we can see what they do with the trains.
That's right, that's right.
But we can hit the
There you
evening
go.
shift.
Certainly can do that.
If, please, by all means,
Yeah.
our
I do.
folks, and we'd be happy to
We can
host
set that
you
up.
and have you come on over and take a look. Again, I think you'll be impressed. I heard somebody talk about the technology that the folks deal with today. It's fascinating. It's well beyond my ability to comprehend, because I'm an old guy. But I'll tell you, it is absolutely fascinating, and we're happy to show it off. And if you're going to Situate after that, let me know. I'll meet you down at the wharf. But
Oh, I know what that is.
There you go.
There's a few good watering holes in that area, I think. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you,
Thank you
Chief.
for coming out. We appreciate that.
All right, any other questions from the board? Can we open it up to anybody in the
Yeah,
audience?
if you want. I just wanted, just one point I want to read into the record, is that Chief Baker would have liked to be here, but he had a family obligation that prevented him from being here tonight. But he did send me a letter saying that although I am late coming to this 3-year-old process, I want to reaffirm my commitment to the concept and to the successful implementation of the rec. I've seen it work successfully in other places. I know how much effort Chief Salland, Chief Hatfield, Deputy Chief Kelleher, and all the other public safety officials have invested into this concept, and they are clearly in a superior position to articulate the case for it. I appreciate Chief Salland's willingness to serve as the voice of law enforcement contingent, as he did at the recent meeting in Mansfield, as he is here tonight. I also want to reaffirm my obligation to the men and women of our communications division, who perform a vital service and who will continue to be the critical link between the public and our police, fire, and EMS services between now and 2019, when a new service delivery structure is established. It is my obligation to provide them with the support and professional development that they need to compete successfully for either the rec or other professional dispatch positions. And I just want to reiterate that it's not only his obligation, I think it's our collective obligation to do that as well.
I do want to recognize one of our friends from Mansfield who's here on his night off, so thank you for attending. If there's any residents in the audience that have any questions or any comments?
Not sure if this is my time to talk. I'm John Holmes, I believe. I reached out to a few, president of the dispatchers union. If it's not, I can step back and I'll wait. So, again, John Holmes, I'm president of the dispatchers union, the MassCop Local 440. As some of you got a copy of it, I do have a letter as well with full support of the police union, the MassCop Local 379. Just like to start it out with, I know, some of you guys got the response. This hasn't been the open process that this has kind of been stated, and that's been across the board, the sort of standard with all the dispatch centers. I've been in contact with all of them, more or less trying to figure it out, because at the end of the day, we want what's best for the community. We want to be able to serve the community properly. And it seems like there's been a lot of miscommunication, bit of, disconnect in trying to, make sure that this goes through. We finally were given a meeting on January 13th to be able to, voice some of our concerns, all of which, most of us were not met with much response for a resolution. So I had a few questions, comments, and concerns that I felt were necessary to bring up. So as per the agreement, it's mentioned the business line. So currently, that staffing plan, I don't really see how it could be feasible to be able to, have one person on morning, noon, and night, day shift and 4 to 12 shift. The call volume, not even looking at game days, is far too superior to be able to do that. Another issue with that is it's been mentioned that this is going to be an improvement in services. Well, a good majority of our emergencies do happen to come in on that line. A couple weeks ago, we had a CPR in progress call coming on the business line. So the standard practice
in this new regional center would be to take that call and to transfer it to the regional center. Well, that's, at the end of the day, that's adding a step. I don't really understand how that can be an improvement in a response time. The way that the call currently works is, if a call comes in like that, we're able to turn to the person working to the left or right of us, depending on which respective side you're sitting on, and appropriately send that response, instantaneously, without a transfer. We've had working fires come in on the business line. We've had overdoses, things of that nature. Geotagging was also mentioned in one of the last meetings, and that local knowledge isn't as important because of geotagging. Well, on the business line, at the end of the day, geotagging is not really going to mean all too much. That's where some form of local knowledge is really going to come into play. We also do have some concerns, though the state police, as it's mentioned, that's where a lot of the cell calls come in. So the way the cell call works, you'd call into the cell, it would go to the state police transfer it out, to the respective agencies from there. We do have a very large volume of those calls that in the transfer get lost in the transfer. So, with that being said, with working fires, overdoses, working fires coming in on the business line, we do have some form of a concern that those calls are going to be lost in the transfer. So, again, we are pretty concerned with the increase in response time in some dire situations like that. We also talked about the idea of radio monitoring the surrounding communities. If you take 4 dispatch centers with a potential to drop as low as 4 people, to be able to, to monitor all the surrounding towns can be problematic. There were several instances that I can reference while I was working. There was the shooting down behind McMorgan's in Walpole. Well, Walpole was far too busy to be able to call us to tell that was going on. And they said that the vehicle was said to have fled on Washington Street, heading our way. The only reason we were able to give an appropriate response and to mount a defense towards a very highly dangerous situation was because we heard it going out. Same thing with, there was a state police car chase going on. We were monitoring the state police. That car chase ended on 95 because in the dispatch center, we were monitoring the state police. We heard them coming our way. We sent the sergeant out there who stopped sticked them, and we ended up stopping that pursuit in the town of Foxboro. Walpole also had an instance not too long ago with an officer that was dragged. The chase went all the way through to Boston. Initially, when the call went out, it was stated that it was going towards Foxboro. Again, Walpole was far too busy to be able to call us. The only reason we were able to provide the appropriate response to help our neighboring agency was because we had the ability to monitor in there. And the same thing with working fires. We hear a working fire go out, they're very busy in that dispatch center. Through the monitoring, we're able to send that response and have units already started that way before they even call us and ask for the appropriate responses. So it's been touched upon, the whole cell calls going into the regional center. 911 calls, if that, from cell phones, if that's the way it's going to go, we're going to be available to that same technology here in a local dispatch center in Foxboro. The state has already said this, and that's if the state police is willing to give it up. So, there was also mention of a 25% split. One of the concerns that we had about that is that, per that agreement, we're essentially renting a facility from Mansfield, so there isn't really a 25% split because, they are receiving some form of money back from that. So another concern
That's
is...
not an accurate statement, but that's okay.
Another concern was there's been over 75% of the PSAPs in Massachusetts have done feasibility studies and decided to opt out to this. So our concern is it's a 10-year agreement with an unknown dollar figure on what happens if we join and it doesn't work out and we need to opt out. It seems as though it's a bit of a safety concern. Essex County had several towns, both the police and fire, that gave it a vote of no confidence. And they actually had to create a subcommittee to study it, to figure out what to do. And they stated in several articles, you can find it on the Globe and the Salem News, that they're stuck with it now and they have no choice but to make it work. So we here in Foxboro currently have some of the most advanced technology, and also part of that agreement is that the regional dispatch center has the ability to go in and to take any technology out of that out of our center. That's all technology that would need to be backfilled to be able to properly use that facility and to be able to continue staffing that facility. I decided to do a little bit of work and to call around to some of the communities that currently have it. So I called down to Hingham Police and I spoke with a sergeant working the desk in Hingham a few nights ago. So I asked him how everything was going and how it worked out. He said it was a disaster from the start, and he said, and I quote, "We're used to it." So I said, "Well, what are you used to?" He said, "We're used to going into the unknown. We're used to asking questions with no response. So at this point, we have it. We have to work with it. We don't have any choice." So it's kind of sad that they can't really rely as much on their dispatchers as, as our current police staff do, and that's why they voiced their concern, and that's why they were willing to stand, behind us and support us in those efforts. Next Gen 911 has also been talked about like it's a space age technology that's very far out. Well, we currently have it in our dispatch center. It's already been installed, and we're already all staffed and trained in it. And our other question was more, what's the plan for the current dispatch center? Savings was mentioned. We were curious what the staffing would be. It was mentioned that we receive only 10 911 calls a day, which has the majority of our emergency calls coming in on the business line. So it seems counteractive to be able to take those emergency calls and have to transfer them out anyways. It seems as though we're adding a step in the process and slowing things down. When you factor in all the different facilities that each town has, the staffing model just doesn't seem to be able to support that. We have to have a minimum staffing, after a Patriots game of 3 people on, and sometimes at that point that's already, difficult to be able to handle the volume of calls that's going to come in following a game, especially this weekend. We had 3 people on following that playoff game. It was very difficult to keep up with that call volume coming in. And to be able to still deliver that level of service that we think that the residents deserve. So, we invite any one of you, individually or as a whole, to come in to see how things are run in our dispatch center, to be able to, truly understand what you'd be missing out on. So I think that's all I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything.
Questions?
Just a general question. So you're the president of the Dispatchers Union,
Yes.
440. Do you see any positives with this?
We don't, no. We're unanimously standing against it, and again, that's why we have the full support of the police union.
So across the finance, the logistics, they're working together with different towns on different situations?
We
No-
already
no
work.
positive?
We work enough with the towns that it doesn't seem like it would really change. We, through the radios, through phone calls, we're able to provide each other enough support quick enough anyways. And, as I mentioned with monitoring surrounding towns, nothing would really change, because if Mansfield's on scene looking for an extra ambulance to an accident, I know before they call that they're looking for it because I heard them. So my ambulance has already started. So there really is, you see what I'm saying? There is no disconnect there of, it's still going to go to the same dispatch center and they'd be able to send the appropriate response. On scene, they're still going to request that, which I'm already listening for it and I'm already ready to go for it. And the response is created in the same amount of time.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Any questions?
Can you just clarify the one statement he made about the regional center taking any of the existing equipment? Is that true? Or-
We're not looking to do that. I mean, I don't know where that statement came from, but we've not discussed that at all at any time during our meetings. And I would like to state for the record that we've tried to be as open about this process as we could from the very beginning. I've had multiple meetings with the previous chairman, the previous president, before then became the communications director, who also was president of a lot of the meetings that we had. I sent an email out just in response to the letter that was sent to the union. I haven't heard a thing. So, and the meeting that they had on the 13th was because I requested it, not them. I requested it because I wanted to make sure that we try to answer as many questions as they could. So I just want to be clear about that point, that's not really not an accurate statement to say that.
I do have one question.
Mhm.
You mentioned in some of your statements that you're concerned about public safety and response time.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I look out in the audience, both tonight and at the last meeting, and we have chiefs, fire chiefs, police chiefs, deputy chiefs, all supporting this, saying that not only will service improve and response time improve, but the safety of the first responders will also be improved. I'm not sure where the disconnect is. Their primary focus is public safety. And they're telling us that it'll be an improvement. I don't know why the dispatchers are saying or floating out the idea that public safety will diminish.
So, you know, obviously with the support of the police union, they have the same concerns. They're just as concerned about that. Nowhere has it been said how it's going to improve or how anything is going to change. There are no issues with the current system. There's no safety concerns. So that's more where my question is I don't see where you can improve anything. I don't know how you can improve a response from a working, CPR in progress where I turn to someone to my right and tell them directly then and there, and it's being typed in as I'm saying it. I don't see where it can be improved. And like I said, I called around to surrounding agencies to speak to those working on the front lines, and it wasn't just Hingham. That was just one example to save your time, but that was more or less across the board. There are, as I stated, there are unions that have put out votes of no confidence that initially signed on thinking it was a great idea, and following that, they put out a vote of no confidence and had to do an additional study to figure out what to do to be able to make it work so that they could remain safe. They have cited going to the wrong scenes, the wrong locations, being given the wrong information. So that's where our concern is that information is going to be disconnected like it has happened in other centers, and it's cited having happened.
I also bring up a point that I guess, we're in a society where 911 is automatic, so it kind of surprises me to hear you say that you get a lot of phone calls on the regular landline. I'm not disputing you, I have no idea, but, could I defer maybe to Chief? Are there a lot of calls that come in on regular landlines versus 911?
The dispatch center actually runs under the police department and the police chief. I can't answer that question. I can just tell you from my experiences in my past and what I see nationwide. 911 is used most of the time. I'm not saying, first of all, I have the utmost respect for these individuals, but I gotta deal with the facts. The facts are, is most cases, it works. And when you go into New Hampshire and you look at the Lakes region, you've got a dispatch center there doing 42 communities. It's dealing with emergency telecommunications, directly dealing with that. These folks, I feel bad for them. They got to do the dispatching along with the clerical work. So I want to get us to be focusing on the dispatching of emergency communications so we're all safer. That's what they should be doing. In regards to, we're going to have more oversight in a dispatch rec than we are with the 2 people that we have in our dispatch center. So listening for the other calls, you're going to have more ears on that. In regards to transferring phone calls, most of our lines that are pertinent to the town of Foxboro is going to be already going to that rec. And then I think the other comment that you made is, we've been looking at nobody knowing about this. I've been the chief now, starting my 9th year. This is the 3rd time I've been in front of you in 8 years trying to get this to go. So this has been going on for a long time. This process with this group of folks in these communities has been going on for 2.5 years. And it's the closest group of people I've ever seen. So I feel for the pain, but the facts show this is a good thing for the town of Foxboro.
And I would dare add to that, I don't think it's a bad thing for them either. Now, I understand they're dealing with the immediacy of the impact of possibly not working in the same environment that they're currently used to, but that doesn't mean that that their situation won't be necessarily improved. The idea is, and this was highlighted in the presentation at the meeting last week, that this business is evolving to the point where it's becoming a greater profession with greater training and greater reliance on the work that they're doing than it ever has before. So I would dare say that while I know that it's an immediate impact of concern from them, generally speaking, I get that, and I'm sympathetic to that. But the point is that I think that this is evolving to a point where it's actually going to be an improvement to the profession itself.
So in response, that we actually do log the difference of when a 911 call versus a landline call comes in, that's logged as when we put in the call, how the call type came in. So we, if necessary, we would be able to look those records up and provide those appropriate numbers. But, part of the issue is, it kind of crosses the board, because you do get the elderly that, they say they don't want to bother you, so they'll call on the business line. And they say, oh, I don't want to trouble you, don't turn the lights and siren on, but my husband's on the floor and he's not breathing. Well, ma'am, that's an emergency. We're going to deal with that appropriately. That's kind of some of the back and forth. And then, again, the way that everyone views an emergency is completely different. The way that I would view an emergency versus someone on the street. Someone on the street, someone backs into their car. Well, to them, their $100,000 car just got dented. That's an emergency, and they're going to dial 911. I wouldn't. I would call the business line and say, someone just backed into my car. I'm not hurt. I'm in a parking lot. You know what I'm saying? So there is a bit of a disconnect on public paradigm on how they view an emergency, and that's sort of where one of our issues falls. And then you also get, with the new technology, someone pulls their phone out and they hold it down. Siri, call Foxboro Police, and it's going to dial the business line. It's not going to dial 911. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where we run into a few of our issues, where a lot of our calls are coming in on that business line.
Okay, thank you.
In the PowerPoint presentation, where it showed the staffing, there were, it was 4 lines with 2 police and 2 fire and a supervisor.
Right.
Does that mean that in one day, is that a day staffing, or is in other words?
That's a shift staffing.
Shift staffing,
So-
okay. So will there be one staff dedicated to Foxborough, one dedicated to Mansfield, one dedicated to Norton, so that the dispatchers will be dealing with people that they are familiar with? Or is it just whoever picks up the phone?
That's not how it works in any location like
Okay.
that. Actually, the way it works is that there are 2 people dedicated to police dispatch, 2 people dedicated to fire dispatch. And I dare say that the people that are working in the dispatch centers, regional centers, they probably don't know any of those people. And the reason why that's not an issue is because of the technology that they have now. So when the phone call comes in, the information comes up on the screen, and they're able to make that call accordingly, or make that response accordingly. What John has described in several instances is the same thing they'll do in the dispatch center, emergency dispatch center. Those kind of things will still occur. The issue about 911 calls versus business calls, that's education, folks. That means that now that if we do go in this direction, that's the direction that the world is going to. We're not going backwards the other way, we're going forward. And that's the direction that the world is going. We need to follow that direction, because that's the better service model that's been looked at and studied across the entire country. We're one of the last places in the country that's doing this. That's the challenging question. I don't know how that can be overcome.
Any more questions? Just one that John brought up. So you looked at the demographics, the population, the venues in the 4 different towns, and somewhere along the way there was a split 25% for the 4
Right.
towns that pays into the technology, the staffing, the fit up, and the brick and mortar of the building.
Right. Well, the building itself is in place. It's just a matter of the improvements to the building will actually be paid for through 911 funds. E911 funds, state
Okay.
funds.
So moving forward, is there a landlord in Mansfield that's
Yes,
collecting rent?
it'll
that-
actually be their building, but
Yep.
but ultimately they'll lease it to the rec center for like $1.
Okay. For
To
a
the
dollar.
district,
So
for
there's no,
$1, yeah.
so you're referring to what when you're saying there's rent? Were you saying that there's an inequity on that
That's what we're
situation?
trying to figure out. That's, what we're trying to find for an answer.
Okay, so
Is
if that's the answer, it's a non-issue?
Yes.
Okay.
So per shift, there'll be 2 fire, 2 police, and a supervisor
Right.
per shift.
Right.
Now, are you concerned that that's not enough staff to handle 4 towns?
So also with the
Or-
ability to drop with 1 person on paid time off. So you're down to 4 with a floating
Supervisor?
impact shift. And some days you'll have the impact shift, some days you won't. So you have the ability to drop down to 4. Again, that is one of our concerns, is that that's not going to be an adequate staffing to be able to properly do all the tasks that you're going to need to do.
Madam
How
Chair,
many
I'd
are on
like-
a shift now, like in the town of Foxborough?
So we have 2 on, 1 police, 1 fire, and then we have a supervisor who works 3 days a week as an admin, and then if necessary, we'll step up, much like this model, we'll step up and we'll work.
It doesn't work on every
accordingly.
shift.
Right, he works three shifts a week.
This one will have they will have a supervisor on every shift. So I think the person who can better answer that, because of the way the model was developed, Deputy Kelleher could address that. Because he was the one that studied that on a regional basis.
Yeah, so when we looked at the staffing, rather than think of it as a daily basis, if you think of 4 shifts of 5 people on 4 shifts, a supervisor and 4 dispatchers, and then we have the 2P to 2A impact shift. So that's 24/7, 7 days a week. So there's no, there's just 4 groups. It doesn't matter if it's Sunday or Wednesday. And then there's overtime built into the budget that we've kind of vetted through Randy to cover certain things. And, it kind of took a global look at it using best practice. And, we vetted it through different, and kind of benchmarked, even locally, the city of Newton's about 85,000 people. We have 1 more dispatcher than they do in the city of Newton. It's about the same population, same demographic. We have 1 less than the city of Brockton. They have about 100,000 people. Their fire department does about double collectively what we do. They about 26,000 runs a year. We're looking at about less than 15,000 runs a year between the 4 towns. So we really not only took a hard look at some regional centers, but also local cities around, because really you're dealing with population.
What do you mean by impact shift, and what's the difference between impact shift and regular
So
shift?
collectively, you looked at
2 to 2.
drivers of calls. So if you look at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the morning, bars get out at 1 a.m. School gets out at 3. We see, you see a spike of activity, both police and fire. Rush hour comes through. So we wanted to have extra staffing on during that time period to kind of handle some of those other calls that came up, during that time.
So you would have
We'd actually
5
have six on.
6 on.
Yeah.
Is that regular time, or is it
Yes. It's an overlap shift.
shift?
So
Okay.
it would be hard for that shift.
So one of the issues with an impact style shift, and we found it a few times in the police department, is that if you have your, like I said, they have the ability to have 1 person on paid time off before it's a fill. So you would have 4 people on, and if the impact shift, say calls out sick or what have you, you can't force anyone onto that shift because they're coming in later in the day when the rotation's already started. So you can't pull someone from the previous shift because the previous shift is already home. So, the impact shift, that's why I referred to it as floating, is it has the ability to not be there. You see what I'm saying? So you have the ability to run at 4 and that be your staffing for that entire peak hour.
I think what that means is that if the other part of that discussion is that once they start evaluating the calls and the call volume and how it's being impacting the operation, they will adjust accordingly to address that. So if in fact there's a true need to have that overlap person and they're out, then they'll have to fill that. So but there may be times where it's not needed because it's a period of time when it's really not that big of a call
You
volume
also
issue.
have the supervisor
Exactly.
available to cover.
The supervisor will be a working supervisor on the shift.
So to cover that shift, you would just call somebody who normally works
Right.
on Thursday to come in on
Exactly.
And it would be
Tuesday.
on
Right.
overtime.
That would be an overtime scenario.
Any more questions from the board? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, I got plenty to say. I hate to do it so late, but as far as you said, the calls,
I'm gonna-
okay, Richard Park.
I don't wanna cut you off, okay? But we're gonna put a time limit on this.
All right, well,
Okay.
I'm the only resident here that's gonna say anything, it looks like, so I don't think that's fair.
Proceed.
Okay, but first of all, my name's Richard Parker, live at 79 West Street. I've been a resident for 30 years. Been a member of the Foxboro Dispatch for 20 years. I'm here speaking as a resident tonight. Mr. Feldman brought up the 911 calls. Mr. Keegan said that the calls, we have less than 10, that's why.
Average of 10.
Okay, average, okay. So an average of less than 10 a day. So the other 200 to 300 interactions, both internally with the police officers, the firefighters, and also with the residents, are gonna be handled by 1 person. Okay? But as far as this being a transparent process, unfortunately, I have to disagree with that. The Chief O'Leary started it back in 2014, when he came before the board, as far as Chief Sellen in Mansfield, looking for a feasibility study on the regional communication. Back then, it was Mansfield, Attleboro, Easton, Norton, and Foxborough. Up until March 8th of 2016, there really was no comments from anybody on any of this. There might have been a little blurb in the board, but nothing major. Then on March 8th, Chief O'Leary and now Deputy Kelleher made a presentation, the past, the present, and the future, about regional dispatch. So on April 5th, during citizens' input at your meeting, I asked the following questions. Simple. Was there a feasibility study? Who conducted it? How much did it cost? Who did they talk to? Was it 4 or 5 towns? And how do I go about getting a copy of it? And when will a comprehensive plan be presented to the board as well as the citizens? 9 months later, now, no one has answered me. I got an answer from one of the selectmen who was on the board that said, Bill, will you be answering Rick Parker? Never got anything. I got another one from a member of the board that said, and I quote it, thanks for staying on this. The meeting or so before the 4/5/16 meeting was the first time it was brought before the board. It was an informational presentation only. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. To the best of my knowledge, there has not been a new feasibility study completed yet. So for 2 years, this has been going on and nothing's been brought forward. So I got basically no answer to my questions. On the 14th, those answers were done. So on April 22nd, still with no answers to my questions, I sent another email to the members of the board and to Mr. Keegan, asking the exact same questions. I got no answers. So as far as it being an open process, it hasn't been. I know now that there was a study done. It cost $100,000. I don't know who did it. I don't know who they talked to. I don't know if it was 4 or 5 towns. I don't know how to get a copy of it. And I don't know when it was started and when it was completed. And I asked each member of the board, have you all seen the feasibility study? Have you read it? I don't see where that's an open process. So here's a list of questions I have as a resident and a taxpayer. In the presentation on 117, it showed the 2017 salaries for Foxborough dispatchers at $639,501. I'm wondering where that number came from, how many dispatchers it included, and what employees were included in that. And the reason I asked that is because in 2015, the salaries were $476,490. That's straight from the town report. It's a difference of $163,000. So even with a 4% increase for 2016 and 2017, there's still a difference of $124,000.
There's a simple answer to that. That's overtime for paying police officers
Police
to man that area.
When
And
dispatchers
that's the
call in
total
sick.
cost of operating the 911 center.
So,
Dispatch center.
so the
that doesn't mean it's actually
476
dispatchers,
isn't right then.
No, that's the cost of running the center. That is the cost.
Then how did it go up to 639?
Because the includes the overtime that we had to pay police
So
officers to
it
cover
didn't
the shifts.
include it in the other one. It just seems that the whole process has been kept a big secret. No one's told anybody anything. This is the presentation at the meeting on the 17th, said it's gonna be on the town website, go look at it. It's gonna be on Foxborough Cable Access, your town will have a disc, it'll be on Foxborough Cable Access. I looked at 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's not there.
It's because we're making the presentation tonight, Rick.
But at that meeting, you said that it would be on the town.
We were going to make the presentation tonight, and
That
then it
is
would be
not what was
following
said at the
tonight.
meeting.
It'll be available
okay.
Starting tomorrow.
If 1 or 2 towns drop out, how does that cost, they just go to three towns? Is that the?
I'm going to defer to Chief Salen on that question. Chief, do you have a thought on that? The bottom line is that if in fact we have a situation with another town dropping out, that means we have to pick up another one.
what if no one wants to come in?
Well, the reality is that's the way it's gonna work over the next, into the future. So,
Chief Sal?
Hi, lady, gentlemen, thanks for having me. I have to admit that I'm at a slight disadvantage because I am not as familiar with Foxboro's practices. I can tell you, I can give you a little bit of insight with regards to what State 911 has told us.
Mhm.
And that is the fact that they are essentially, and I can speak about Mansfield. In the last 3 years, I've seen my grant go from 55,000 now down to 51,000. And what they're doing is they're reducing that. And every single year, they're reducing it by a certain percentage. And that is basically with the ultimate goal of pushing people into a wreck. Essentially, what's going to end up happening is that State 911 is going to tell us where to go. And this is an effort to essentially begin to create an organization that has, as its basic tenets, local control and accountability at a local level. As opposed to, there was I believe it was in 2007, they did the New Bedford and Fall River study, where they were going to take all of our PSAPs and they were going to put them down in New Bedford and Fall River somewhere. It would have been an absolute disaster, because there would have been no local control and accountability that's attached to it. With regards to the governance agreement, the town managers have done their best to write out the governance agreement to, again, ensure that the boards have says, the town managers have says, the police and the fire chiefs also have says as well. As far as people just dropping out, I would defer to the governance agreement in and of itself. It outlines exactly what would happen there, and it basically is still in the hands right now of the town administrators and town managers.
Very close to being finalized.
Thank you. Just a couple more. If the regional dispatch center has cost overruns, who pays it? Who pays the
Collectively
difference?
We collectively would, and also, and the state would also provide.
The reason
some
I ask
funding
that
process.
is because the other regional dispatch centers that are in operation right now, just an example, the Essex County, which is supposed to be a model.
Essex County is not a model. That
Okay,
one
well,
failed
in
because
2017, it's going to have a $1.5 million shortfall.
That was not, that's the worst model you could have picked in the state.
2018, 1.5. 2019,
failure from the
1.6.
beginning.
All right, let's go down to Hingham. Hingham, which is part of the South Shore, in 2014, their salaries and benefits was $675,000. The last year they were separate was $456,000. So it cost them $219,000 more, even though they were told it was going to be a 50% cut. So I think the figures need to be looked at a lot harder than what they have been. And the next question is, how much state funding is guaranteed, and is the guarantee in writing?
And I guess the answer to that is that what's missing from that equation is the offset from the state that you get to run those centers. So that funding, actually, what's significant about that is that the funding that goes into the Hingham Center, based on our 4 towns collectively, is about 3 times the amount of funding that we currently get. 3 times more. So that's an offset against any of those costs.
Okay. How much of the state funding is guaranteed?
It's all
And is the
guaranteed. It's
guarantee in
guaranteed
writing?
because the guaranteed it's a money, it's not from the state, it's from a fund.
That's
It's a
correct,
911
but as the
fund.
911 and you have more dispatch centers, that money's gonna go out to more dispatch centers. So if you have, say the pool's $1 million now and you have 6 regional dispatch
But
centers.
what you're failing to recognize is that there'll be fewer individual communities drawing from that, which will, those monies then go back into the regional centers.
Okay, and I know Mr. Holmes touched on the votes of no confidence. My next question is, and I still haven't gotten any answers about the feasibility study, so I'm hoping I can get some answers to that, but have any documents been signed by the board or any representative of the town of Foxboro in regards to this regional dispatch center?
We have not signed an agreement, no.
So that no one in town signed the agreement to go for
No,
the
this is what the
feasibility
purpose of the
study?
discussion is tonight.
What about the feasibility study from back in 2000?
Feasibility study didn't require that. It was-
Okay,
because it
I'm
was
just,
a-
I'm just asking, I'm trying to find
Yeah,
out.
I wasn't part of the feasibility, so I
Right,
can't
I
address
understand
that, so I can't,
So-
but it wouldn't require that anyways.
So my main question is, what company did the study and how many feasibility studies have they done?
Does anybody want to address that? I was not present during that period of time, so. Chief, Deputy Chief, or Chief?
I might as well.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go back through the history a little bit with regards to the feasibility study. So originally, I was the one that wrote the grant that got us the $100,000 for the feasibility study. The original company that we hired to do the feasibility study missed several deadlines and then filed for bankruptcy, so they were terminated. It was then determined by the police chiefs and the fire chiefs, we all got together and we made a determination that, quite frankly, we're not going to have an outside company come in here and tell us what the best practices and the best way to go about doing this and the best business models and everything, considering the fact that as we look around us, we have plenty of wrecks, whether they be in the Hingham, whether they have the Rutland and all the others, the Essex, and the mistakes that they've made along the ways, as well as the things that they've done well.
Right.
So what we did is we broke the entire study up to various subcomponents. For instance, there was an 8-member subcommittee that created the operations manual that is a part of the study as well. There was a subcommittee that created the organizational structure and the manning and staffing and such. There was a section that was broken out with regards to the governance agreement, which was essentially the town managers and the town administrators. And basically, we went about over the course of about 2 years, painstakingly, of creating the feasibility study in the aggregate, brick by brick by brick, piece by piece. It was painstaking. It was a lot of work, but you know, I have to say I got to thank the fire chief here, and you know, it was a lot of work that was put into it. So that's essentially the history as far as the feasibility study. You know, I think it was last May when everybody got together, and the town managers turned and said, "All right, well, we want a copy of what you guys have done so far." And I think that they basically had to claw it out of my hands at that stage. I didn't want to give it away because at that point it was like, well, wait a second, what's going to happen with this part of it? At that point, what we had produced up to that stage was provided to all 4 town managers, and the rest of the working groups continued to work along with it.
So is that available for a resident to get a copy of?
I would defer, we have a copy available. We make one.
We can produce a copy.
That's fine.
Sure.
Okay. And then the governance agreement, there's something in there that kind of caught me off guard, that it said something to do about a private entity.
Yeah,
Would that be private ambulance service, or?
What the issue, that issue was addressed at the Mansfield meeting, and I think you were there.
They took that out?
I think that provision was going to be reworded or retooled. To address that.
As a resident, I just got one last thing to say, and then if I can, I have one comment as a member of Local 440, if that's okay. I'm asking that the board delay a vote on the subject to allow all residents to be equally informed of all the information that has been gathered over the last 3 years. I feel that 1 week after a presentation with few facts and limited information is not enough time for residents and town government to make such an important decision that will greatly impact the safety of the residents and public safety personnel in the town of Foxborough. That's all I have to say as a resident. As a member of Local 440, again, very disappointed in the process. I had approached Chief O'Leary in emails, as well as Mr. Keegan in emails and in person, of saying, hey, if you go regional, I'd really like to be involved in the process. With 20 years' experience, I could probably, help with insight. No response. So
again, not an accurate statement. He was actually invited to come to the meetings. He actually showed up at a couple of the meetings, so I don't know where that came from. But that's all right.
No, I asked, it said to be part of it. Yes, I did go a couple of meetings as a member of Local 440, but that wasn't part of where you
I'm having a hard time understanding which part of you here.
There's a difference between the resident is concerned about the cost, the response times, and the safety of my family in Foxborough, okay? The dispatcher in me is concerned about, obviously, the response times, obviously my job that I've had for 20 years, and the non-transparency of this whole process for 3 years. Those are my concerns.
Well, I think those are the same concerns that everyone here who's worked in this process share those same concerns. That's why we're here.
Well, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any comments?
Linda Walsh, 8 Pond Ave. Just coming through, but I've been kind of keeping up with it. watching it, and a couple things that came up that just I question is, yes, it came in front of us several times, dribs and drabs. I know that there's been meetings publicly for folks to come and get their answers to questions. But again, it just seems like you folks aren't really ready to vote on this. And again, we're getting to the 11th hour because of a money situation that if we don't take advantage now, you know, we hear this all the time, and that's, you know, the end of the day, that's what it is. But I don't know that you guys are ready to take the vote for it, for something like this. I'm a little concerned by what I heard the folks at the union maybe weren't in discussion. Have they met with you folks? About any?
They were asked to attend meetings, that we asked them to attend meetings. I extended myself to them. They've not approached me at all in this, and that's a fact. And in fact, even the police union has never approached me on this issue. My door has always been open to them to talk to them about this, always been open to them. The fact that they're showing up tonight with all these questions are questions they should have asked me before. I would have helped them answer those questions. I'm the chairman of this committee. They could have easily approached me. They never did. That's a fact.
Linda, no disrespect. I mean, we talked yesterday, and this has been going on for a long time, and we have been extremely transparent. I think there's been a lot of due diligence trying to make sure that the public and everybody clearly understands the purpose for us doing this. It's to better the service, to improve the quality of us being able to respond and get to everybody. And again, as I said earlier, I'm not trying to take away from these fine folks, but the facts are the facts.
Absolutely.
And we've been bringing this up and discussing it with everybody very openly. And I'm sympathetic, I understand, but really honestly, to delay this, to drag this on, it's not any benefit to this town. The police chief and myself as the fire chief are fully supportive to this process, and that we really think it's the best interest for everyone.
Well, some of the numbers that I'm hearing, I'm just a little concerned. You know, Ginny, you brought up some good points. And what I hear is, right now we have 2, a fire and a police on dispatch. We have the supervisor that's there, semi there.
For one shift.
For one shift, right. So now we're going to 4 towns being covered by 4.5 people.
No, right. So let me
Okay,
just-
so 4 people plus a supervisor that jumps in just as this other supervisor does. But that's for 4 towns.
Plus additional coverage on the impact shift.
That's right. So it's actually far more coverage than you're seeing now. And
Oh, it is. So it's more like it's almost 10 people then?
No, there'll be like 6 people on shift at the max. So which would mean.
So we have 3 now in Foxboro.
No, you have 2. You have and sometimes only 1, because if they can't fill it with a dispatcher, a police officer has to sit in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, what kind of service is that being provided in comparison to a full-time dispatcher? Because, and then is that a good use of resources? Because don't we want the police officer to be on the street? So I guess that's the challenge that we see with this now, is the fact that we have a system that will address strictly dispatch, and then back it up with our own person in our own building to address the business items.
There is
So
one
we-
very quick thing also, Linda, that everybody's really not talked about is the infrastructure.
Right.
Right now, our
huge.
dispatch center in the public safety building's coming up onto 9 to 10 years old. That's the dispatch in public safety. That's not talking about our infrastructure that's well over 15, up to 20 years old out in the streets. The E911 funds are gonna help us restructure all that to highest, newest technology at not the taxpayer's dime. So that's one piece that hasn't even been brought up tonight.
Some of the money, I believe, that's spent in this town should be on public safety. And if it means more training, more equipment, we do it for the schools all the time. I think it's important to put that money to good use in the public safety.
I don't think anybody disagrees with it. I think this is probably the most efficient way to do that, so we can get the best result from that. So I understand the concerns, but if you hadn't seen all the things that have gone through up until now, And we answered a lot of these questions last week, or they were responded to last week at the regional meeting. Some couldn't make it, I'm sure, but we tried to, I don't know if you saw the presentation that was done earlier.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yep.
A lot of those questions were answered during that process, so.
I still don't get the number situation. Did you get it, Jenny?
What, the five?
The
in
number
terms of-
situation?
In terms of the staffing?
The staffing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understood what they were
You
saying.
comfortable with that?
Well, that was my question, that was one of my questions.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't see where,
That follows a national model, not just a regional, or not just a few towns, a national model.
that has a stadium in it and a venue of Mansfield. That, I just, sorry.
It's based upon call volume. I mean, you can't get away from that. It's 80, we're talking about 80,000 people. In terms of the call volume, that's really the key piece. So,
If I could, just to address, I'm gonna sit real quick. To address whether you're talking about Xfinity Center, and again, I'm gonna limit my statements with regards to Xfinity Center, because that's what I know. I haven't worked the stadium since '99, so don't judge me for it. When we have a show at the Xfinity Center, we actually hire another dispatcher on a detail to help offset the calls for service that are going to end up coming in as a result of that. So that cost doesn't end up getting borne as a result. So in other words, although we may end up with a higher number of calls per se because of the Xfinity Center on those 30 to 40 show evenings, it's being offset by additional personnel that we can hire. We anticipate continuing that practice with the rec by hiring somebody from the rec on a detail at Xfinity to continue to continue that practice, to make sure that we're not siphoning valuable resources away.
So we'd be doing the same thing during a stadium game?
you could.
Oh, and that discussed? I mean, because I would feel more
I don't
comfortable.
specifically know that, and I don't want to make that statement
Right.
without knowing that for certain, but Mike, that does happen. Okay. Okay, very good.
And who pays for that? Is that part of
That's paid, that
That's
we,
paid for by Xfinity and by Gillette.
Right.
Because it's a,
It's an added cost based on that impact.
Yeah, it's billed as a detail, so that does not get
Right.
paid, that cost does not get borne by the taxpayers. Again, the whole essence the whole reason why we have people hire details is to offset the impact of any given event in a given community. So again, that cost gets borne by the Xfinity Center, not by Town of Mansfield.
so if there's an event at the Xfinity Center and there's also an event at Gillette Stadium, there would be 2 extra people hired, one for Xfinity and one for Gillette?
If needed,
I can
if
speak
needed.
for Mansfield, I can
Yeah.
say yes for Mansfield, and I assume for
Yeah.
Foxboro as well, that would be additional personnel.
Yeah,
that
if there's an
we
impact, we would
Yeah.
we would certainly want to do that.
Well, you guys got a decision to make. It's up to you. I just was going by and wanted to put my 2 cents.
Thanks, Linda. The last question?
It was just as far as addressing that dispatcher working so we don't get offered to work at the stadium at all. The bulk majority of the calls are gonna come in to the dispatch center on the business line. It's people looking for their friends or what have you. That all comes to the dispatch center. It's just been a recent thing where we get an extra 2 hours, after a game or after a concert venue. But the way that they structure it is they have a police officer who works up at the stadium who deals with the radio traffic. So it's none of us. We don't go up there and specifically work it. We take in the 911 calls, as we did prior, as well as the business lines, but we aren't directly working up at that center.
But I think that the key is that the function is being addressed. The need is being addressed.
Somewhat. Well, like I said, up until recently, we were operating at our normal staffing, trying to, deal with an increased amount of calls.
Right, but with the rec, it'll be an added function with the rec, having that detail, so it's another person
But-
that's,
Oh, sorry.
regardless of who's staffing, forget about, if it's
Right.
local staffing or regional staffing. From a community standpoint, okay, it's gonna be staffed as a detail, not an expense borne by the community, and it's gonna not take away resources from the regular folks that are in the rec.
So like I said,
it just-
I wanted to just
Yep.
address it. That's how it's done, so it was
Okay.
more just a clarification on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and the decision for that detail is made by the chief of police? Is the regular
Again,
details?
As I can
Is that what?
speak for Mansfield,
Yeah.
that decision's made by me in Mansfield.
Right, okay, so it would also be by the chief of police in Foxborough in
right.
regard to, because it would be a detail to the
Correct.
stadium, okay.
Okay. So, I think we have, we can make a motion to approve the participation in the Regional Emergency Communication Center.
No, as part of our agenda, it says Bill will make the motion. Is that true, Bill, or?
Yeah, that's what, yeah, it's, the language that actually is in the agreement. Now, let me just pull that for a second, so I can make sure I have the right language here for you. Okay. The motion would be, shall the town of Foxborough accept the provisions of sections 18.0 to 18V, inclusive of Chapter 6A of the general laws providing for the establishment of a regional 911 emergency communications district, together with the towns of Norton, Mansfield, and Easton, and the construction and/or siting, administration, operation, and maintenance of a regional 911 emergency communications center by the district under the provisions of the proposed district agreement filed with the Board of Selectmen.
So move.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion?
Just one thing on the discussion, just to give my overview of some of the issues that came up. I was at the very first meeting back in May, kind of kept up to date. I think I made one other one. From that very first meeting in May until last Thursday night, this group did some phenomenal work. They looked at, from what I saw, they looked at everything, they came up with solutions. And those meetings were open to everybody, so, I mean, if anybody wanted to go, they could have gone. So, hats off to you. That's all I gotta put in
Appreciate
for
that.
discussion.
I want to say thanks to all the members of the public safety staff, so all 4 towns, and the town managers and the boards of selectmen who've been, involved in this process, and to all of you, of course. But it has been a long process, and I think we don't know all the answers. I would readily admit to you, and everybody here will do that. But we do think this is the right direction to go, and we hope it will support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion was made, it was seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The group that loves you and hates you at the same time. It's just like my kids,
Yeah.
they all hate me.
All right, so we had reports?
All right, Selectmen's update. I'm gonna make this quick.
No, take your time.
Actually, with the commentary on the town of Foxborough before the game, bringing us to the worldwide stage, and the Patriots actually advancing to the Super Bowl, and the Atlanta Falcons advancing to the Super Bowl. I received a call from Mayor Mike Miller from Flowery Branch, Georgia,
Oh, ho, ho.
who,
Yeah. Game on, fellas.
It's game
and
on.
ladies. Game on.
It's game on. So we made a little friendly bet. We're still trying to finalize the details, but the basics are, if anybody's interested, Wrigley's Chewing Gum is manufactured in Flowery Branch, Georgia.
That's interesting.
So
That's
if
why
the
they have the
Patriots
train,
win,
right, that goes through that?
if the Patriots, yeah, so Flowery Branch is the home for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
That's their team headquarters and the practice facility. So if the Patriots win, they'll be sending up cases of chewing gum to some of the residents of Foxborough. And Mayor Miller will be wearing a Patriots jersey at the first public meeting following the Super Bowl.
That's good.
But,
However, if the Patriots shall let us down, which nobody
which we hope will
thinks
never happen. Yeah.
they will, our obligation would be to send them a food basket filled with some local favorites.
and I will have to wear a Falcons jersey at the first public meeting following the Super Bowl.
It's okay with me.
What, did I have to wear a Falcons jersey or the Patriots lose?
No.
How about,
I don't think
how
you're
about
gonna
the
be
four of
wearing
us
the
will split
jersey.
in on the basket and you wear
Oh,
the
yeah.
shirt? That's equity.
I'm glad you clarified that, Jenny. I'm glad you.
Well, I'm hoping some local businesses
Yeah.
will step up
Yeah.
on the food basket.
Now, the second part to this is the fact that actually I received the call initially, and I referred the mayor to Dave, because Dave is the chief elected official, and the mayor, of course, is the chief elected official in Flowery Branch. So I asked him, I said, do you have a city manager? And he said, yes, I do. I said, well, I need to have his phone number, because I want to call him. And so now, I got a phone call back today, and now we're both trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with our friendly wager on this. I'm actually going to ask my staff members tomorrow what they think would be the best way to deal with this. So we're going to try to come up with the most creative way to deal with it. They asked us, they said, well, you've got enough practice doing this, so you should know how to do this by now. I said, well, we like to make it interesting every time it happens, so
Well,
this is.
usually it ends up being Mayor Walsh and the mayor of Atlanta.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't remember.
No,
us,
this is the
so
first
it's
time.
It's good that
Yeah.
it's brought it back to
Yeah,
the
this
true
level.
hometowns.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because Flower is a small place. I mean, I looked it up on the website today, and it's a pretty tiny place, so hats off to them, and glad they reached out to us, because it was, I think it's appropriate that we actually do this.
Should be fun. I didn't have the heart to tell him that he doesn't have a prayer.
There you go.
Being diplomatic. So
Uh-huh.
I wished him luck.
There you go.
And it's your mother-in-law's 80th birthday.
There you go, that's right, so that counts. That counts for something,
On game day?
Yeah. There you
She's
go.
not having a party, is she? Oh, yeah, she's in
You got
Florida.
someplace you gotta be.
Bad timing. So we're all set.
There you go.
All right, that's all I have for selectmen's update. Does any members of the board have anything to share?
Just one thing, and it's probably a little more sobering than that, but last night I met with the Conservation Commission, and this is a topic that we brought up 6 months ago, maybe, Cohasset. There's a building there that Bill Sheehan had done all his work with the children.
Mhm.
So we kicked around that idea. Last time that we met and talked about this, I think we got all the approval or the consensus that we could take it down, demolish it. And then it was put on hold just because of a little uneasiness about lawsuits. So we revisited it with the Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee. Since then, brought it to the commission last night, and short of them saying thank you and give them the sledgehammers too to help, we're gonna take the building down. It's gonna be crushed, it's gonna be put in dumpsters. We're gonna set it up at a time where some of the victims can come. There's one victim in particular in Florida that wants to come out. So hopefully within the next month or so, Bill said he would get a demo permit for us.
Yep.
And then second to that, last night, the chairman of the third reading of the House met with us, and if you remember, there's a special warrant article for mandated reporters to strengthen it in Foxboro. That's gotten some second thoughts from the third reading committee chairman, and they want to broaden it to all of Massachusetts, not just Foxboro. So, short answer, we're not getting it just for Foxboro, so it's going to be a little bit of a delayed, but thank you to State Representative Barrows and Jack Walton, who already filed this last week. So it's on the way, and there's other groups in town, in the state that want to join up, so hopefully it'll go a little faster.
Good.
So, but we'll let you know the date, and if you guys could be there, that would be great to show up at Cohasset.
Yeah, besides the fact of what happened there, that building needs to come down anyways.
It does.
It's just a nightmare of an area down there. It's a safety hazard, so good.
So, and then just thank you to Rob Lucas, who's a fireman in town that is coordinating contractors and dumpster providers that should be no cost to the town. And it's a way to the community to kind of step back in again and say, let's finish this thing.
Good. Good update.
Okay.
All right. We had talked about 2017 Board of Selectmen goals. Can
can we put that on a schedule? You know, we keep talking about it. I wanna stop talking about it and start putting items on a schedule so we can start hitting dates. I know we wanna talk about, you know, we
We'll
have,
talk about that tomorrow morning.
we have
Try
the
and get a schedule.
MBTA on our next meeting. We're gonna talk about, possibly the pay plan at
Pay
our
plan,
next
yeah.
meeting
Yep.
with the budgets. It's a good segue for further discussion on the
Mhm.
budgets,
Mhm.
in general.
Yep.
And some of the other things, I know we're looking at contracts with time limits for notifications. That should be on the schedule as well. So, we've talked about it, let's start putting it into action.
And I just, in terms of the budget process, we're still reviewing budgets. We've got more meetings tomorrow night with the AdCom. I've not reached my final recommendations on any of the budgets at this point. Actually, more information is becoming available to us on a daily basis. You know, one of the things that I'm pleased to report is that we think we're in the final stages of resolving our streetlight issue, which we were gonna be acquiring our streetlights. In our current budget, that's about $145,000, that once we're able to acquire those streetlights, the cost of, we're gonna buy them over a 5-year period, and it's a sort of a lease, you know, a lease purchase arrangement. That even with the cost of operating the new lights, which would be LED lights, and all, buying the lights will also refit them with new LED lights. It'll go from a cost of about $145,000 a year down to it'll be like $51,000 and $36,000 collectively, so about $80,000. So we could save about $60,000 right out of the gate by doing that on an annual basis. And once it's paid for, it's less than another $51,000. So that cost goes effectively at one point down from $145,000 down to $36,000. You know, we'll probably keep $50,000 in case something breaks, we have to fix it, that type of thing. But the good news is that the LEDs last a lot longer, and they don't require as much maintenance. And another regional type thing, I plan to talk to Mansfield about helping to service those streetlights, because they have their own electric light plant to do that, to see if we can work with them on an agreement on that basis as well. So.
Excuse me, speaking of streetlights, there was I remember months ago, we got a correspondence from a lady who lived on South Grove Street, I believe, near the Mansfield line. And the problem was, there was a big space between the last light in Mansfield and the last light in Foxboro, and she was like right in the middle, and she had requested a light. Do you know if that ever came into fruition? Or with the new lights?
With the new lights, we might be able, very well be able to address that for her, because of the fact that the new lights will actually have a greater area of lighting capability based on what we currently have.
I thought Roger said he was gonna address it and put another one in, or
Yeah,
something.
we never really heard.
That's the way I thought it was too, but
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, so we
tomorrow.
can ask him tomorrow. We'll follow up with him tomorrow on that to see.
Yeah,
Check on
okay,
it.
thank you.
So the plan is to provide you with my recommendations at the meeting on the 7th. And then the board will certainly provide your feedback to me as to which direction you want to go. My intent would be to show you, what a balanced budget looks like, and if we were to go less than a balanced budget, here's what it would look like. And again, that's going to be I'm going to make some recommendations to you, trying not to be draconian in that approach, because I never think that's appropriate either, but to look at things, what would have to do in order to address that. So that's going to give you the option of looking at it both ways. And I know that you haven't seen that before, but I think it's appropriate to give you that because that's what you've asked for. So, and at the end of the day.
That's at the February 7th?
That'll be at the February 7th.
When would we be getting that information?
Well, I'm not even at that point yet, so it would probably be at least, probably the weekend.
Please don't say February 7th.
No. My plan would be to give it to you like Friday before the February 7th meeting, so you could at least have a couple of days to look at it. Okay. And then, again, that's just my first opportunity to look at that, to look at it with you, so you still have other time. That's not the drop dead date for getting the final recommendation for me. We would have another opportunity to look at that as well.
But at least I'll identify some trending.
Yes.
Where it's heading.
Exactly right. So, The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that a lot of information is going out now about the new electric aggregation program. Mail's being sent out to people. I'm doing a television show on Monday that's going to provide further information on that from the company who's doing the work for us. We're meeting with the seniors tomorrow. We're doing some education with them at my monthly meeting, 12:30 meeting with the seniors. And then additional information is going on our website now about the program as well, providing all the proper contact information, et cetera. So we encourage people not to throw out the notice. Make sure you read it carefully, because the notice itself comes out on the Town of Foxboro Electric Program Notification Letter. That's what this letter looks like. I don't know if you can see it from there, but that's what it appears to be. And as a result, it provides you the indication that we are actually offering electricity at 9.203 cents per kilowatt hour. If you want to go green, you can actually pay a little bit more and get that coverage as well. But the key thing is that that's going to be locked in for 19 months, whereas currently you go pretty much at the whim of National Grid that can change those rates whenever they see the appropriate time to do that. So you'd be locked in.
They change it seasonally.
Right, they change it seasonally. So this would get you through that 19-month period without seeing a change in your power supply rates.
So if a resident wants to do that, they do nothing, and
they do nothing.
If they want out of it,
if they want, they have to physically write out. Well, they have to check the thing off and send it back to us and say that they want out.
So if somebody doesn't read it and they throw it out, they're going to be automatically
They're going to be
signed up.
automatically enrolled.
One important note about when you get the letter, it's gonna say it's from Texas, and then you're gonna see Town of Foxborough letterhead,
Yeah.
so people are calling us to ask if it's legitimate, and
Yeah.
and
It's
it
not
is.
junk mail, so
It's
folks,
being
it is
mailed
totally
from
legitimate.
that company,
Right.
under the Town of Foxborough letterhead, so if you get the letter, and you
This-
see Texas.
Please don't throw it away.
This program is, unlike some of the false leader programs,
Right,
there is no cost to opt out and go
Right.
back to the default service.
right. That's right.
You can opt in, you don't like the program, you can opt out at any time and go
Right.
back to your default service with no
Right.
hidden charges, no fees,
Right.
there's no pass-throughs.
Right.
You just go back to your default service.
And last but not least, I first of all, I want to say congratulations to the Patriots organization for winning the AFC Championship last week. It was an exciting game. Great to see the team on its way to Houston again for another Super Bowl showdown with this time with the Atlanta Falcons. So the question that I wanted to pose to all of you is: would it be appropriate for us to try and work towards doing some sort of a rally for the team before they go? I don't know if we didn't do that before, and I don't know if there's interest in doing that now as a town.
They didn't.
Has
a
it
few years
been done
ago,
before?
didn't we? I remember going down, and it seems to me they left in buses.
They haven't left to go yet.
But
No, I think in the
didn't we do
past,
that
people have gone down there.
Yeah.
Just kind of on their own.
On their own?
Yeah.
But if we can organize something, and big
Sure.
rally, maybe around the common, see if they can come in and.
I'll
do
try
a
and work
loop
with
around
my
the-
folks
yeah.
today, tomorrow rather, and see
Yeah.
if I can pull something off to.
I think people
last
are
minute.
doing little, I know the
Yeah.
Moms Club
Yeah.
sent an email because they wanted to know if they could have permission to go on the common and put signs up. So they're
Yeah,
getting
so-
together before that and putting them up.
So maybe we do something that's special and do something on the common itself.
Yeah.
And that they have the buses
Just do a
do
circle.
a circle around the
Yep.
common, and then head out to Logan.
Everybody
That's
knows
what
our
it is.
common now.
That's right.
Right?
Just about.
No matter how you spell it.
That's right. So, it's just that, I think it's a neat thing to be able to do that now that we've gotten some national attention. I think it's kind of a feel-good thing for the entire community.
Yeah,
I think it'd be great.
And let's not underestimate, I mean, we're kind of spoiled here,
Yeah.
but what they're doing is unprecedented.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just absolutely amazing.
It is. Yeah, it's history and history before our eyes, which is great. Great to see.
I think if something's well-published, be careful you get what you ask for. It won't be just Foxborough people.
Yeah,
I think that common could be packed,
Yeah.
and you'd have to shut down some roads. But that's your problem.
That's my
Your
problem.
idea.
Thanks for dumping that in my direction.
That's probably why they did it like at the stadium when they were leaving, because maybe.
Yeah, let's do it on the common. Nice
Yeah,
to do it
well,
on the.
yeah.
If
It's
they're
gonna
willing to
be
do it, if they
cool,
can do it, that's the question. I don't know the logistics of that, but I'll have to reach out to them.
Yeah, I think the common will be the logical place. I mean, that's the center of our town.
Yeah.
That's their hometown.
Yep. So.
See if we can make it work.
Now that the flag's back up.
That's
It's
right.
not embarrassing anymore.
That's right.
Can we put a second flag up for that?
Yeah, we should put a Patriots flag up there.
I don't know if you
Oh,
can
that's
do
not my
that.
decision.
No, I'm just talking logistic. Can
Well,
you-
just for that one event, I wouldn't do
Yeah, yeah,
that,
we
if
could.
we could do that.
There's plenty of them.
Yeah,
around town.
fly the flag and the American
Yeah, I
flag on
think that
top.
would be
That'd
nice.
kind of
Yeah.
If we could do that for that one event, I think it'd be cool.
Okay.
So, all right, we'll see what we can do. That's all I have. That's enough. It's quarter of 11.
Yeah, and in the essence of time, I'll just say congratulations to the Patriots. and See you next time.
See you next time.
Vera?
Yes, I'll be quick, believe me.
You better be.
Great. So I didn't catch one thing because my brain's not working. Are you going down to Houston?
I am not going to Houston, no.
Right, excellent.
I don't have
Yeah, next-
$10,000 to spend on
Yeah,
on
next
tickets,
select-
yeah.
It's getting close to 11, so I was like, wait a second, is Bill actually going
Oh,
down
I
to
am not
Houston?
Our
going
next
to
selectmen's meeting is down there. Around the Super Bowl. There you go.
Yeah, Jenny,
I
we'll
love
be traveling
it's on my
for
bucket
that
list, but
meeting,
it's not
so-
something I'm
I mean, there are people with season tickets who have still managed to not win that lottery.
Yeah.
And so,
It's a great opportunity for anybody who can go, and
Oh, yeah.
I certainly would not tell anybody not to do it. I guess it's a great, it's on my bucket list of things to do at one point in my life, but it's not something I can do right now.
Yeah.
I've got a wedding to
If you
plan
can
for
afford to
this
go
year.
to the Super Bowl, we pay you too much.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I agree.
There you go. There you go.
Other thing was just in terms of the demolishment, Jim, that you said that is the building permit going to be, is the demolishment permit going to be for next month, or is the actual demolishment probably going to be in February?
Probably the demolishment. We got to figure out who the contractor is going to be for liability and insurance. And if we've
Excellent.
got-
But Aaron's going to be able to make it up for February, it looks like?
we're gonna.
You're gonna reach out and
to him.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. That's about everything. I will just call people in the morning. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, guys.
It was a short night, thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All right, everybody.